नमस्कार कलिंग इतिहास संगोष्ठी आपण मानक आज रही आभासी आलोचना को मु सुनील विश्वाल स्वागत जनाऊँ। कलिंग इतिहास संगोष्ठी यह पंचम अर्घ्य प्रथम चारिटी जो आभासी बैठक होता से प्रथम बैठक रे श्री प्रकाश नायक द्वारा द कोलंबियन एक्सचेंज गोटे पुस्तक समीक्षा कर द्वितीय मीटिंग रे आमे श्री संजय बरालंकर स्वलिखित द रियल हिस्ट्री ऑफ कोणार्क परिप्रेक्षी आम गोटे आलोचना चक्र करथिले। तृतीय मीटिंग रे ओडिशार प्रख्यात ऐतिहासिक श्री अनिल कुमार धीर ओडिशार ऐतिह्य शीर्षक एक आलोचना चक्र आम अनुष्ठित करथिलु। तापरे श्री जितु मिश्रंकर महानदी शीर्षक गोटे आभासी आलोचना होता। ये सब गुड़िक आपण मैंने जो भाई भाव प्रत्यक्ष भाव में योगदान करथिले एवं परवर्ती पर्यायर यार जो रेकर्डेड भर्सन जोटा कि आम विभिन्न सामाजिक गणमाध्यम पोस्ट करूँ से उत्साहजनक योगदान देखी आम आपण मानक बहुत धन्यवाद जनाऊँ। एवं यही जो संगोष्ठी मुख्य उद्देश्य होची जे ओडिशार इतिहास ऐतिह्य विषय साधारण साधारण स्तर लोक भितर आलोचना एवं सचेतनता जागरूक करिया होची यार उद्देश्य। विशेषकर आज जो युव समाज युवपीढ़ी एवं जो मैंने आग्रही समस्त पाखे ओडिशार गौरवमय ऐतिह्य को पहुँचेवा होची एकमात्र उद्देश्य। एवं यही जो प्रयास आम प्रत्येक रविवार गोटे गोटे टॉक आम प्रेजेंट करुछु एवं यही जो ऑनलाइन टॉक से आम आज पर्यंत जहाँ जहाँ अनुभूति होती से अनुरोध करुच्ची जे केवल वक्ता को छाड़ी आम समस्ते यही टॉक समय आम निजर माइक्रोफोन टाको निश्चित भाव बंद कर रखा एवं जितेबले आम जो वक्ता मुख्य प्रेजेंटेशन पर जो प्रश्न काल आसो से किसी प्रश्न पचारे चाहिए ताहले आपण हैंड रेज करेंगे। एवं आमर आज को-होस्ट श्री आदित्य बाबू सी आपण मानक जन पर क्रमान्वय जन पर जड़े आपको देवे डाकिबे आमंत्रण करेंगे आपंकर प्रश्न बा मत रखापी। ताहले कौन हम यार रेकर्डेड भर्सन कौन प्रकार डिस्टर्बांस रहिबो नाही। तेणु आम आज मीटिंग आगो गड़ेबा। मु श्री सौम्यरंजन पंडा को अनुरोध करुच्ची आज वक्ता विषय से टे आमको अवगत कराइबे एवं आज जो टॉपिक ता विषय यथासंभव संक्षिप्त भाव गोटे बैकड्रॉप रखिबे। संजय बाबू कहूँ।
धन्यवाद सर। समस्त को नमस्कार। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल प्रीता की मु थ्रू सोशल मीडिया ही फास्ट जानिली आउ प्राउडली आई कैन से मो इतिहास नॉलेज हिस्ट्री नॉलेज उपरे माने मेजर कंट्रीब्यूशन ताकर ही अछि। 50% ऑफ माय नॉलेज कम्स फ्रॉम हर। आज कमिंग टू द टॉपिक आज हमें कलिंग ना विषय रे बहुत कम चर्चा सोशल मीडिया रे कि अदरवाइज लोकों को जना कलिंग ना को नहीं हमें गर्व करू। कलिंग विषय रे ओडिशा कि ओडिशा बाहर आमे जेतेबेले पचारू केवल गोटे दीटा कथा जना थाए कलिंग युद्ध रे कलिंग हरि जाइतिला बस एतिकी आउ ताठू अधिक किसी लोकों को जना न थाए। तो कलिंग नाटा केते विराट थिला केते बड़ थिला। इवन हमर आजिका जोटा प्रेजेंट डे ओडिशा कथा कहले ओडिया भाषा अति प्राचीन भाषा किंतु ए भाषा ठू भी अति प्राचीन कलिंग कलिंग याठू भी बहुत पूर्व थिला। ए नाटा केवल आपन को कलिंग कोस्टल बेल्ट रे कि महोदधि जोटा कलिंग सागर कहते से अंचल मिलेनी अक्रॉस इंडियन ओशनिक रेल्म रे इ नाटा परिलक्षित हुए। मैं ता विषय कथा हवा आउ मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंटली सॉफ्ट पावर विषय आजिका डेट रे इंडिया रे गोटे बहुत बड़ा टॉक ऑफ द आवर अच्छी जे आमे केमिति साउथ ईस्टर्न द्वीपपुंज मानकरे निज एस्टाब्लिश करथिले निज को ता ऊपर मुख्यतः श्रेय आमे साउथ को दो चोल मानकु किंतु चोल मानकु भी बहुत पूर्वरु देयर वर कलिंगन इम्प्रिंट्स आउ स्पेशलिटी ऑफ दोज इम्प्रिंट्स आर दैट एवडा होलिस्टिकली हेतला ऑर्गेनिकली हेतला दीज आर नॉट फोर्स्ड जबरदस्ती का ऊपर लदी दिहाई नथिला एवडा से माने खुशी रे ग्रहण करथिले। तेणु बोध हुए एते दिन पर भी एते पॉलिटिकल साइकिल आसिला पर भी एबे भी से इम्प्रिंट्स गुडा हमको मिलुची। तो ता विषय साधारण ओडिया को भी जानिबा और गर्व अनुभव करिवा रो यथेष्ट आवश्यकता रही। ता ऊपर आज प्रीतानी टॉक देवे। तो मु आउ बेसी समय नष्ट करबिनी समस्त को हमें आरंभ करिया।
थैंक यू सुनील बाबू, थैंक यू सौम्य, समस्त को धन्यवाद। मु आज टॉकटा इंग्लिश रे प्रेजेंट करिया को जाउची फॉर अ ब्रॉडर ऑडियंस। खाली ओडिया माने एक्सेस करवा छड़ा ओडिशा बाहर जो अन्य माने लोक अछंदी नॉन ओडियास की भारत बाहर भी जो माने अछंदी जहार एथिरे इंटरेस्ट अछि से माने भी जानि परिबे, सेति पई आई विल बी स्पीकिंग इन इंग्लिश। सो without much further ado, let's start. This talk would be more of my personal journey. It will start as how I got into all this. Because as I was mentioning a little earlier, I am not a student of history, or I don't have a background in history, but circumstances happened with me, some serendipitous events, which led me into this journey to find out more about my own heritage, the glories of our heritage, the antiquity, the extent of my people. So it all started with this little brooch. Few years ago, here in one of the stores in United States, I chanced upon this little brooch. It's a handcrafted brooch in silver filigree. And I thought, like, wow, they had selling something from Katak Tarkasi work, like, the Tarkasi silver filigree work. But on the paper here, it was written as handcrafted in Indonesia. So I went and asked the store manager, like, is this a, like a typo or something? Is this handcrafted in India? They said, no, it's from Indonesia. It's a silver filigree from Indonesia. So that was like a very surprising thing for me, that how can something be so similar to what we see in Odisha, the Tarakasi, is also found in Indonesia. So I further Googled and researched about it and found that far away in the Sulawesi Islands of Indonesia, there is a place called Kendari, which is famous for the Kendari silver filigree works. So on this part of the slide, you see all our Tarakasi, and this part is all like few pictures that I could get from the Kendari silver and gold filigree works of Indonesia. And both were so similar in pattern and style and the type of make. And both are centuries old crafts. And the best part is we from Odisha, we don't know about an existence of Kendari in Indonesia. And I spoke to some Indonesian friends and colleagues here. They didn't know about like something like that, which was present away from Indonesia, far away in India. So another serendipity happened, like following this during the COVID times, around the top Kudurukuni Asa. I was like just searching something more about Tapui, and in Google, the first search, answers came as Tapui being a Maori word, not Odia name of the Tapui from Kudurukuni Vrata. So that made me very curious, and I delved more into it, and I found that indeed in New Zealand, the indigenous people of New Zealand who speak Maori, in their language, Topoi means to travel. And Topoi itself in Odia is a very antique Odia word. It is the name of a damsel from the Kalinga Sadhava families who used to go to travel to faraway lands of Bali, Java, Sumatra, and other areas in the Southeast Asia. So, and this Taupoi word is not very common now. It's a word which was more popular maybe in the ancient times. And this Taupoi, there was no other word which was like similar to that apart from this Maori word, which meant to travel. Same thing again, I came across very surprisingly again while reading something else. I came across this, I was not consciously looking for this. I was reading some articles, I was going through something, and I found this word Kainga. And Kainga in Maori, not just Maori, many of the Polynesian languages like are spoken in different islands in the Polynesian belt beyond the beyond Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, like in the Pacific Ocean, right? So it's very close to the Oceania. Like it is also part of Oceania, actually. Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea. So nearby all islands are Polynesia. So many of these Polynesian islands, the languages spoken there, like in Maori, in Tonga, and in Samoan, Kainga is a word which means village. It also means family or kin. Like these are illustrations of a Maori Kainga. So that also like that led me thinking like Kainga is so very similar to Kalinga. And like here when we live in USA, I have found that a lot of people of Indian origin, like whose parents, or not parents, maybe like people from 3 generations or 4 generations ago who were brought as indentured laborers to Trinidad and Tobago or West Indies, but they are Indian in origin now. Like they don't speak Indian languages much, but their words, like food or their customs and the different words they speak, like let's say for example, chana, they would not say chana, they would say chana. Or similarly, like words change slightly after a few generations when people are displaced from their own native place and live in another place. There is a slight change in words. So this led me thinking, and there are other words. I'm just giving you one example like that. So that led me thinking, like Kainga may have been like a little derivative after many, many generations from the word Kalinga itself. There is no recorded thing, but it's just a circumstantial evidence assumption. That, and something that is present even now in the Philippines. And I think most of you are aware that in the island group of Philippines, there is a province even now, which is called as the Kalinga Province. Nearby the Payo province, there is a Kalinga province. So Kalinga province is inhabited by the indigenous people who say they belong to the Kalinga culture. And these people are world famous for their Kalinga tattoos. In fact, many of these people, and the last of the tattoo artists, I think, was featured in many of the international media and magazines. So even in present day, you see the name Kalinga, like directly Kalinga, not even Kainga here. And very, very surprisingly, only last month or like a couple of months ago, again, I stumbled upon a place named Kalinga in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. It's a little place which is named as per them. I just took this from their website, that it is named according to one of their indigenous words, Ngalinga. So think Ngalinga and Kalinga. So such similarities are there, although it's like far away Australia, New Zealand, Polynesia. We as growing up, we have known that Sadhavas used to go to Bali, Java, Sumatra, but we have never heard that they went that far away. But still, we find the names and imprints even now in all these places. And then another thing I found was, this is a book I was, going through about different traditional textiles from Bali. That was a book. And in that, I found a traditional textile called Keling. So Keling is even now an archaic textile from Nusa Penida in Bali. And that led me thinking that, again, this is again something like a cultural imprint which is left after maybe many generations. It's still there. And some of the people I know here, my co-workers and people who are from Southeast Asia, I heard that Indian people are still like from long time, they call them as Kellings and Klings. And I found that in even recorded articles and, other papers and all. So you see that Kelling and Kling used to be like when people from Malaysia or Indonesia thought of Indians, they used the words Kelling or Kling. And Kalingam, this is again another book I was reading. It was not related to Odisha and history or anything. It was about Tamils 1800 years ago. There I find the mention of Kalingam, which is the ancient Tamil word for fine weaves, clothes, and textiles. And this Kalingam, as the author mentions here, this author, Kanakasabai, he wrote sourcing all the ancient manuscripts from the Pandyan times about like how the prized fine muslins and weaves procured from the Nagas of the Kalinga region was a major source of revenue for the Pandyan Empire's trade when they did with the ancient Roman Empire. And most of Pandyan Empire riches was mainly because of the Kalingam textiles. And these textiles were so important for them. So the entire, whenever they said textile or weaves, they put the word Kalingam for that. While reading Mahaparinibbana Sutta, not like the translation of Mahaparinibbana Sutta, I very pleasantly found the mention of Kalinga as a textile. So when Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, when he attained his Mahaparinibbana, it is written that for redding the ground to put the Buddha's mortal body on, they strew sand all over the ground, spreading Kalinga and Kambala clothes and silken cloths on it. So imagine from the Buddha's time, Kalinga was also denoted for the fine weaves and textiles. And it was so significant that they wanted to use it for laying the Buddha's body there. So Kalinga as a name of a place, as a name of a people, as a name of a textile, I found in various different disparate places, which was very, very surprising for me. Like all these things were new for me. So this led me into learning more and more about the thing that we have known, that our Kalinga Sadhavas have always gone to Java, Bali, and Sumatra. So that part everyone in Odisha knows, that Kalinga Sadhavas used to travel. But what was the extent and the depth of it, and is there any imprints of it? I was slowly getting, and it was such happenings that I was like trying to find more and more about it. So we will learn what I found, related to all this. So Kalinga, what's in a name? If you see Kalinga, Kalinga, Kainga, Kalingam, these are just not names. They just not denote ancient Odisha's names, but they stand for many other places all across the Indian Ocean realm. So the name itself, it speaks for itself. It is for the region and its people. And why I say the name speaks for itself, because after all these millennia, across all these miles of the Indian Ocean and all these disparate places, we still find imprints of this name somehow or the other. So let's see also what other names were attributed to Odisha. So our present-day Odisha or ancient Kalinga had various names throughout the different time periods. There were some perceived names. When I say perceived names, like it is a name that other people say for us. For example, we call our country Bharat or Bharatvarsh, but India is a perceived name that was given by people who came from outside. Like that, Mishra. Mishra is the name for Egypt, what they considered is a name. But everyone else outside Egypt, we know it as Egypt, not Mishra. Something like that, So these names here, Kalinga, Utkala, these are the names which were the attributed names. This is the perceived names. Ukkala, Kaling, Oddiana, Oddivisa, Holing, Kialing, Orissa, Gangaride, Kalinge, Dosarin. So these names were perceived as the name of this region by foreign travelers, foreign scholars, monks, geographers. So in their records, you find these names mentioned. But in our own Indic records, local records and Indic records, we find the names Kalinga, Utkala, Rout, Radesa, Kongada, and various names for various parts of the Kalinga region and Odisha as we know now. Now, what does this signify? Why so many names? What is the significance of these perceived names or these attributed names? I personally feel that perceived names, if there are so many records from foreign travelers or scholars who have written about these names, that means people from far ancient times, from faraway places, used to find this particular region, geographical region, uh, a very significant place to come for trade and other pursuits, because they thought it significant. They came here or they traded with these people. They have left records about these people and this place in their own records via these names. But what is the significance of our own, like why do we have so many different names for one region? It's because this is a region now, a political boundary, or like one region we know as Odisha. But this particular region was much more in the past, and the geographical extent, the political boundaries must have changed. The rulers might have changed. People might have changed. People might have come and gone out, and but still there was a cultural continuity with neighboring regions. So because of different rules, different time periods, different portions, there are different type of names which are attributed to this region. Now, most of you know this. I think you are all aware about what was Kalinga. I'm just trying to put here like records from what is there already recorded, how Kalinga was not just our present day Odisha. Like for example, in F.B. Eldridge's very significant paper, he says that on the east coast of India, stretching from the north of the mouth of the Ganges to the Krishna, was the ancient kingdom of Kalinga, founded as far back as the 8th century before Common Era, and where, according to the inscriptions found, navigation and maritime commerce formed part of the education of the princes. Many ancient Jain canonical texts and records talk about the Kalinga region and the kingdom as far back even as 8th, 9th century BCE. So most of the canonical records from these ancient indigenous religions like Jain texts, Buddhist texts, and our own different versions of text from Shaiva, Shakta, and different faiths, we find the mentions of Kalinga in various ways. For example, Mahabharata, the epic Mahabharata, which is again very ancient, right? It talks about Kalinga region in various ways. Like this, in this particular stanza, it talks about the extent of Kalinga, where Kalinga was situated. In other chapters, there are mentions of the Kalinga king and the princess and other things. So, when we were talking about significant mentions about how people have, scholars and people have mentioned about Kalinga, I have like cherry picked only few of those, just to, because it would be just for the time constraint. I'm just trying to showcase few of the significant mentions that people have spoken about Kalinga. Let's take a mention from 1st century before Common Era. It's not from an Indic historian, it's from a Greek historian called Diodorus. He talks about the mighty elephants of Kalinga, which were the best, owing to which this country has never been conquered by any foreign king. For all other nations dread the overwhelming number and strength of these animals. So this is again, like we know that Chanakya has already spoken about Kalinga's best elephants in his works. He's talked about Kalinga's cotton also. But apart from Chanakya's works, we also see foreign works about talking about Kalinga's elephants and its unconquered status. Then we also find mentions from ancient Roman times how diamonds from Sambalpur region were the most coveted gemstones that the ancient Romans wanted. So they traded with India or with Odisha for these diamonds. And this is mentioned by the Roman historian Ptolemy. And also later on, a British historian, Edward Gibbons, in a very enlightening book, he has talked about this. there is a lot more to it. If you are interested, you could find more, descriptions about it in references. Then these are from 1st century before Common Era and a little later than that. That was very ancient times. Let's take a more recent time, like in this huge time cycle, like, we talked about 8th, 9th century before Common Era, that is 2,900 years ago, people knew about Kalinga and thought that it is an important kingdom. Let's talk more recently, like 14th, 15th century, like, only 500, 600 years ago. Still, we find mentions from other travelers, and Wang Dayuan's records. This person is not a big scholar or a historian. He's just a normal traveler from China who traveled to many places across the Indian Ocean. And in his memoirs, in his records, he mentions a lot of things about when he came to Odisha or Kalinga. He talks about the soil is fertile, crops are luxuriant, and they have 3 harvests yearly. People are honest as the Buddha, and they are more prosperous than in any other foreign land. So as recent as 400, 500 years, 500, 600 years ago, Odisha was perceived to be one of the most prosperous, and the people were perceived to be one of the most honest people on this planet. So that was the significance of this land for people from all across the globe. And not just that, like so many people have mentioned. I have just put few pictures and only these 3 mentions, but trust me, there are so many more if you go looking and reading. So similarly, in our Indic mentions, like people from India, with different parts of India, what they have written, the Karakandu Chariyu, which talks about Avakinnayo Karakandu, the big Chakravartin Samrat of Kalinga, who was from almost 8th century or 9th century before Common Era. So this is from like he was a Jain king and a contemporary of Bhagwan Parshvanatha. Mahavira, later on after centuries, Mahavira himself has talked about Karakandu as the bull among kings. And Kautilya's Arthasastra, anyway, mentioned that he mentioned about Kalinga's elephants and cotton. Ashtadhyayi of Panini, in his grammar book, he has mentioned about the Udra Vibhasa and the Udra people. Similarly, in Arya Manjushri Mulakalpa, a Buddhist, ancient Buddhist text, there is mentioned of Kalingodra for the the nearby bay of the ocean, which is called as the Bay of Bengal. It used to be called as Kalingodra, and the islands in the bay called as Kalingadreshu. That is mentioned in Arya Manjushri Mulakalpa. And Raghuvansa of Mahakavi Kalidas, in that also Mahakavi Kalidasa has mentioned about the mighty king of Kalinga, Hemangada, and how he has mentioned him as the Mahodadhipati and Mahendrapati. He's the lord and the master of the Mahodadhi, that is the eastern seas, or currently known as the Bay of Bengal. He's also known as Mahendrapati because Mahendra Mountains are again a very significant location or a geographical point in the entire Bharatvarsha's history, and Mahendra Mountains have a lot of significance in Kalinga's history. So he has Patir Mahendrasya Mahodadheshya. So he has mentioned him as Mahendrapati and Mahodadhipati. So like I'm just trying, I'll just be going fast forward, like quickly we'll see in all different parts of Southeast Asia how we see the presence of Kalinga or the imprints of Kalinga. Let's see the case of Myanmar currently, which is the country Myanmar, or in ancient times it was called Burma or Brahmadesha. In ancient time, Burma went by the name Kalingarata or Kalingarashtra. As far back as Gautam Buddha's times, where we see the story of Trapassu and Bhallika, the merchant brothers of Kalinga, they were gifted some strands of hair by the Buddha himself, because they became his first lay disciples. And taking these Kesha Asti, or the hair of Buddha, they took some of this Kesha Asti with them when they were going trading to Burma, and they gifted it to the king there at that time, who enshrined it in a pagoda there. Right now, it is in the Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon. So this particular sculpture shows the story of Trapassu and Bhallika with the Buddha after his enlightenment. So that way, in ancient Burmese records, you find as far back as Buddha's time, you find the presence of Kalinga merchants going to Burma, and how importantly they, like one of them got Keshasti and the pagoda is still there. Then even in ancient Burma, there was the kingdom where now even you find the mention, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The name is Sri Khetra. So this ancient place of Sri Khetra of Burma, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site now, it's uncannily similar to our Sri Khetra Jagannath Dham Puri. And you still find it now in Burma. One more case study of Burma is the Ananda Temple from Bagan. So in Bagan, King Gyanasiddha built Ananda Temple during the 11th century. Like it's more recent, like these are all more ancient and this is more recent. It is said that he had great relations with Kalinga, like ongoing relations, and he was inspired by a temple for Ananta that was found in Khandagiri Hills that time. So he was so inspired by that, he built an Ananda temple in Bagan. So now moving on to Sinhala or Sri Lanka in the present time. So Singhala's formation as a kingdom, I think most of you would be knowing about how Prince Vijaya, the grandson of a Kalinga princess and a Banga prince, how he, like that is a big story, and not going into the details, I'll just be succinct about it. So how Vijaya, when he arrived in Sinhala, he founded the kingdom of Sinhala, naming it according to his father Singhabahu. And later on, after many centuries, we also see another mention of Kalinga, which the Sinhalese people have very carefully nurtured even till now. You would find movies, books, theater, sculptures, art, everything revolving around this particular beloved princess from Kalinga, Princess Hema Mala or Hema Mali, as they call her in Sinhala. This princess from Kalinga bravely brought the Danta Asti of Buddha, the tooth relic, from Kalinga to Sinhala, which you find even now enshrined in the Sri Dalada Maligawad temple at Kandy. And Hema Mala's story is also extremely fascinating. If we have time during discussion, maybe I can tell you more about it, but I will leave it at that here. And another record of important mention of a Kalinga lineage or heritage or relation is from Nishanka Malla's time, who has again and again talked about his Kalinga ancestry and how he maintained relations, marital relations and economic relations with Kalinga throughout. So throughout Singhala's history, almost till more recent times, Sinhala has always had a cordial relation and marital relation and very good relations with the Kalinga kingdom, since they have always thought that most of their ancestry and the roots lay in Kalinga. Moving on to a very, very significant and fascinating thing. This was a revelation to me. Again, this was a serendipitous thing. I just stumbled upon this while reading something else. And I was reading about an account, and then in the Maldivian history, the translation of the very Arabic version of the Maldivian history, which is written by one of their kings who was a very great scholar, I found that they have mentioned by themselves, they have mentioned that the first Hindu kingdom, the Solar dynasty or the Aditya Vansa in Maldives, was founded by Surudarsaruna Aditya, who was a prince from Kalinga. He was the son of King Brahmaditya, the same Brahmaditya who had done the temple of the tooth, or the tooth relic temple in Dantapura, his capital, the same tooth relic which was carried by Hema Mala. So Brahmaditya's son, Surudarsaruna Aditya, he was banished and he landed in Maldives, and he founded the first solar kingdom of Maldives there. And through centuries, his descendants kept ruling. And the last of the solar dynasty, there was a princess that time. Her name was Princess Damahar. So she got married to another Kalinga prince in her times, a Somavanshi prince called Baladitya. So because the Damahar married Baladitya, the lunar kingdom in Maldives was started. And this lunar kingdom, the Somavansha, it sustained till the Islamic rule in Maldives started. So Maldivian history, all the entire Hindu rule of Maldivian history is strongly related to its Kalinga roots. And during this, there were like all these centuries, there were like steady exchange of like Buddhist scholars and monks, and people used to come to Maldives. There were still little, you'll find sculptures and relics and, art in some of the Maldivian islands. So that point to their, Indic heritage. Now let's move on to Java. Java, Bali, Sumatra, mostly we in Odisha, we know that our Kalinga Sadhavas used to go to all these places. But that is mostly because of our folklores, our stories, or our festival. We think about all this. That's all we know. With that, romantic idea of like Sadhavas sailing all far away and getting riches and trade. That's all we know. But more significantly, this is something else I stumbled upon. John Crawford's memoirs, in his translations of the Javanese records. Like John Crawford was a East India Company, physician, Scottish physician, who was revered much by the Malaya Indonesian people because of his mastery and his his interest in preserving the ancient Malaya, Javanese, and other Indonesian languages. So he has translated the ancient Javanese records. So the Javanese records, in their thing, the people from Java, they have written that Kalinga is the only country of India known to the Javanese by its proper name. They always designate, like John Crawford has written this, they always designate India by this name, Keling. It is to Kalinga that the Javanese universally ascribe the origin of their Hinduism. People of Kalinga played a significant role in the evolution of Saivism in Indonesia. So this must be a time when Saiva faith was at its peak in Kalinga, maybe during the time of the Salodbhavas, the mighty Salodbhavas, whose offshoot, it is believed that the Shailendras of Java were an offshoot or a related branch of these mighty Salodbhavas from Konga, the region of Kalinga. Also, you find in Java, in central Java, there used to be a Hindu-Buddhist kingdom during the 6th century Common Era. Its name was Kalinga. So all these mentions by the Javanese themselves, that how Kalinga was the country, was a place that they understood India as, their first contact of India was people from Kalinga. So that's why they call India as Kaling, or people from India as Kaling. Even the first, their faith at that time, Saiva faith, was from Kalinga. So this is all recorded in their history. Like not even any, unfortunately, we don't have any records, but we find it in their records. Now going to another country, Cambodia. In ancient times, it was called either Funan or Cambodge. Local legends from Cambodia talk about union between a local Naga princess, Soma, with a foreign Brahmin from the southeastern coast of India, who was Kaundinya. Now they say that Kaundinya arrived there, and Soma, and because of the union between Soma and Kaundinya, the main first Indianized rule, the dynastic rule, started in Cambodia. Now, significantly, if you see, you find mention after that, in their records, you will find mentions of Mahendragiri as the name of places in that time Cambodia. So there are at least 2 or 3 Mahendragiri. Now, if you correlate Kaundinya and Mahendragiri, even now in the Mahendragiri region or the Ganjam Gajapati region, the Kaundinya Gotri Brahmins are more, like this is thanks to Swami I got to know, like Kaundinya Gotri Brahmins are more indic to this region of Odisha. So again, it is a circumstantial evidence, but this points very strongly that this southeastern coast must have been the Kalinga coast from where Kaundinya went. And this is another fascinating thing, that in ancient times, China also got visits from Kalinga. And it was a, like how now we have diplomatic and political and, cultural, socio-cultural, politico-social visits. Like that in long ago, that time also, because at that particular period of time between 8th to 10th century, Buddhism was at its peak in Odisha, and it was the time of the rule of the Bhaumakaras. One of the signs of the Bhaumakara royal house, Subhakara Simha, he was an adept master scholar in Tantric Buddhism. He went to the Tang courts of China carrying a lot of important Buddhist scriptures. And when in China, he stayed there for many years and learned Chinese, and he translated many works, Buddhist works from Sanskrit and Pali to Chinese. Even later, Pragya, a monk scholar who was based at the Pushpagiri Vihara, Pragya was not from Odisha, but he was a resident monk scholar at the Pushpagiri Vihara in Odisha. He was sent to the Tang court by the Bhaumakara rulers as an emissary. He also carried a lot of scriptures and stayed there, and he also translated many scriptures into Chinese. So many important works of Chinese that you see now are the contributions of these people from Odisha who went and translated them. Now in China, you wouldn't find the name Subhakara Simha or Pragya. They are attributed a Chinese name. So maybe if you find Chinese records and see a Chinese name, we might not immediately understand that it is Subhakara Simha or Pragya they're talking about. So similarly, there were other scholars from other parts also who went, but these are the Kalinga imprints. This is another thing which is not so, popularly spoken about, but the Buddhism that you find now in Tibet or other Himalayan kingdoms, the ancient Tibetan texts mention of Mahasiddha Indrabhuti, Mahasiddha Lakpinkara, who was the founders of Vajrayana and Sahajayana branches of Tantric Buddhism. And they were from Sambhala in Odiyana. So how do we know that this Sambhala Odiyana is nothing but our western part of Odisha, Sambalpur region? It is because Indrabhuti in his work, in his most significant work, what he composed, the first verse he dedicates to Jagannath. So the first verse starts with Jagannath. So from that, it can be concluded that Indrabhuti knew of Jagannath and worshipped. He has dedicated this verse to Jagannath, and Jagannath is the soul and whole of Odisha since many centuries. So Indrabhuti and his sister Lakshminkara must have been from Odisha. And Padma Sambhava, who was the adopted son of Indrabhuti, is the one who carried this Buddhism to all these Tibetan or the Himalayan kingdoms. And even now, they revere him a lot and with respect. And every year, the Hemis festival is in the honor of Guru Padma Sambhava. Even there were other Siddhas and Mahasiddhas like Saraha, Luipa, Kanupa, who went to all these places and or wrote something that was taken to all these places, and because of which the Tantric style of Buddhism is not to their Odisha roots. Now we have talked about all these presence of Kalinga imprints, Kalinga names, Kalinga things all over the Indian Ocean realm. So how did that happen? Like what exactly happened? And we find the imprints all over these areas. So the most important thing is the people who did this. They are none other than the Kalinga Sadhavas. So Kalinga Sadhavas were the merchants and traders from Kalinga who did maritime trade, through the oceanic voyages, not through land. Through land, the people who did trade, everyone knows, is the Sartavahas or the caravans and all what went. But the Kalinga Sadhavas were the traders who did oceanic voyages, and their ships took goods and commodities all across the Indian Ocean realm to different parts. So this is just a quirky vantage point from Kalinga. I just wanted to show, if you're standing on Kalinga and the entire, unfortunately, it's not a 3D model. Otherwise, you could see standing here in Kalinga, you see the vast expanse of the water in front of you, and it is like beckoning you to go and explore and see, other people across the vast expanse of these blue seas and the oceans. Now, here I want to just add a little thing. When we talk about voyages or people, this is all about the coastal area we are talking, right? So any place where there is a coast, like coastal people, they by default, their sea legs develop faster than people of inland. They become water babies. You can say they learn to swim before they can even run. So Kalinga Coast, like this part of Odisha, being having a long stretch of coastal area, the people who inhabited this coast must have, fine-tuned their coastal activities, oceanic activities, maritime activities, from very ancient times. Because for survival, you need to work along with the elements, with the whatever, adverse things also come. You have to work along with that, like be it the cyclones, be it the, tsunamis, be it dangerous water creatures, be it anything. Like people have to learn and fine-tune their thing, and then after a lot of trials and errors, and then they fine-tune and they can do better. So voyages, marine voyages or oceanic voyages, we have mentions from as far back as 8th century before Common Era, or 2800, 2900 years ago. So imagine it must have started even before that. So by the time it was from now 2800 years ago, they had already mastered all this. So people had already started traveling along the coast and to further away areas. Because as they say, there is a saying in Southeast Asia, the land divides and the water connects. The people who are sea people, they feel more connected to other sea people rather than they feel connected to people far away in the inlands. So this is a route. This is a route how the voyage must have happened from different records I just created. So mainly from the ports of Tamralipti and other Kalingan ports, the Sadhavas used to sail down the coast. They didn't go like this straight. They understood that if they sail down all the way to Sinhala or Sri Lanka, that is an easier way to go. And here Sinhala was a refueling port where also they did trade and stayed for some time, refueled and took more resources, and took at least resources for at least for 60 days of time. From here, then they traversed all the way, crossing near the Nicobar Islands to the northern tip of Sumatra. From Sumatra, along the Malacca Strait, they came to the southern part of Sumatra here. And from here, the Sadhava ships had 2-3 different options. Either they could go towards Cambodia, Champa and other places, or they could go towards Java, Bali and all. Or even from here, they could go to Brahmadesha. So from the Cambodia part, they could go to China. So these are all recorded mentions. And the yellow ones I drew is from just thinking that this also might have happened towards Philippines or towards further away towards the Polynesian parts. So these, when they took the advantage of the monsoon winds, because the monsoon winds were favorable for the voyage towards Southeast Asia during November, And while coming back, they took the other winds, which during May coming from Indonesian islands. So the reach of the Kalinga Sadhavas is like they are unsurpassed mariners. They were they were everywhere in Indian Ocean that time. Sinhala, Burma, as we said, like all these places. They were also trading with Persia, Greece, Roman empires, and all that, but they themselves didn't go there. But their goods and commodities reached there. More of the socio-cultural impact you see onto the east of Kalinga. Now, where did they go from? The Chilika Lake was considered to be the gateway to Odisha's glories. In one of the versions of Brahmanda Purana, it is mentioned as the important center of trade and commerce. Ships having several masts and sails were often sheltered in the lake, and even some of the ships are 3 to 5 story heights. And that time the lake was very deep, and through a wide opening, it was connected to the sea. And this was the point from where ships mostly used to go towards the Southeast Asian, bigger ships used to go towards Southeast Asia. So even now you find relics like monolithic pillars along the coast. And there is a mention of a Deepa Adiya Pahada by the esteemed Silla Tripathi Sar in some of his papers. You must go through his papers. It's like a treasure trove of maritime history in that. And from his papers and some of the other papers, here are 2 maps of some of the important ports on the Kalinga coast in ancient times and until up to the medieval times. But many people ask us, like, if there were so many ports, or Kalinga was so famous for trade, are there any ports now? But unfortunately, these are not like any living ports right now. But we do have like a lot of archaeological findings around these areas, and evidence of trade activity happening there. So what happened to this port? Nothing but nature and time happened. As it goes with coastal areas, it is always prone to, sea level rise, silting, sand dunes, and a lot of things like river mouth also getting deposited with silt. So many things happen on the coastal area. I personally believe that a lot of our history of Odisha, our heritage lies beneath the depths of the waters of these eastern bays here. So maybe in the future, if there are like advanced archaeology, like oceanic archaeology happening, we might find more evidences sometime, like real evidences of Sadhava ships or other things. Who knows, like how they are finding Viking ships in the West. We might find like that. So let's find some evidences and mentions of these merchant vessels, like real evidences. That means tangible evidences. Tangible evidences in the terms of seals, coins, or even amulets, all these things, and mentions in texts and records. So like Sanghamitra, Ashoka's daughter, or Princess Hema Mala, they all traveled at different times to Sinhala by a Kalinga ship from a Kalinga port. Huensang, Fa Hien, Yizing, all these are Chinese monks and scholars who visited India, visited Odisha. They mention in their memoirs about taking their return journey on a Kalingan merchant vessel mostly from the Tamralipti port, which was a important Kalingan port. And interestingly, the Chandraketugad that we all hear about, in ancient Bengal, Chandraketugad was nothing but the main city which was adjoining the Tamralipti port. So it must have been a great center of commerce with Kalingan, links at that time. So, and many of the seals and things which you find, you see the Kalingan ships on that. There is a mention of a great sea captain Buddhagupta in one of the stone inscriptions in Kedah, Malay Peninsula, where he has inscribed for prayers for safe passage at sea. And he was from Eastern India. So Buddhagupta, it seems that he was from Kalinga. Then how did the Sadhavas travel? They, as I mentioned a little while ago in Brahmanda Purana, how it was mentioned, they had different types of ships. Not just Brahmanda Purana, but Bhojaraja's very iconic work, Yukti Kalpataru. It mentions of different types of ships used by the Kalinga merchants or Kalinga ships. They were like Samanya, Vishesha, like for riverine voyages, for sea voyages. There were different ships. And other records from China and all, they have mentions about extensive network and trade routes for maritime voyages across the Indian Ocean. So this is from a Chinese record where they talk about the Kalinga trade routes or the Kialing ships. Then, as I said, like there were various ships. There were passenger ships, cargo ships, small, large, even such large ships that they could carry big cargoes like elephants. They could carry hundreds of passengers at a time. They could carry few passengers. Then Ibn Khordad Bey, a Persian geographer, says how elephants were carried via freshwater navigation from inland via major rivers. And then they came to the seaports, which took 15-20 days. So many ancient Jaina and Buddhist texts talk about these boitas, these voyages and these boita ships and everything. Even Fahian's records mention about the Kalinga ships having lifeboats. Like he also mentions about they carrying provisions, food and water for 60 days. And even now, if you see the Boiti Alu, Boiti Kokharu in our Odia language, the word Boita in that must be a vestige from that ancient time where such Desialu or Kokharu used to be taken during voyages for their longer shelf life. These phrases from Borobudur temple, you can see there is a depiction of a lifeboat. And here you can see how the people on the boat are like fishing, so for even for fresh fish for their food. So Borobudur temple sculptures show ships from the eastern coast, like of India, basically Kalinga, because again Java, they said that we knew people from Kalinga as our first contact. So these Kalinga ships going and colonizing Java. And Kalinga Sadhavas, did they just put a sail and just sail through the ocean like there was nothing else involved? No, I don't think so, or you should not think that, because these ships cannot just sail at the mercy of the winds only. Like these people were highly skilled. They had skills in different types, of aspects of navigation. So people were adept in celestial navigation, reading the stars and constellations in the night. They used devices like the Matsya Yantra and other mechanical devices. As you can see on this frieze on Borobudur temple, they are using different, apparatuses here. And this Matsya Yantra is also mentioned in records. There was a unique thing which was used by the merchants, by the Sadhavas. They are called Disakaka. Dishakaka is a very ancient Indian, even in Indus Saraswati civilization or other coastal areas of India where there was voyages or oceanic voyages, they used Dishakaka. Dishakaka are land-finding birds. They are tame birds which were carried by sailors. So if they are in any uncharted areas of the ocean where they don't know, they would leave these birds, and they, according to their flight and return pattern, they would know about the nearby land. So this is a palm leaf depiction of a Dishakaka. Who were the crew? Were there only like people who rowed the boats or only merchants on that crew? Of course not. Think about today's shipping, today's ship, or today's anything, even aircraft. Like one vessel has to be manned by so many people, and everyone is expert in their own way. So it's like a great teamwork and like a well-oiled machine. At the helm, there is the captain of the ship. And then there is the crew with various expertises, like some were oarsmen, helmsmen, navigators, experts in oceanic studies, some in winds, weather, currents. Then there were armed security also to safeguard against pirates. There were cooks, cleaners, odd job workers, maintenance. Like there were so many different people who who manned the ship. And apart from the traders, merchants, and the ship people, they also carried other miscellaneous passengers many times. There were merchants, monks, scholars, there were sculptors, architects, linguists, translators, various type of people went, just like how now people go to other regions to for newer prospects or better prospects. Those days also people went and tried their luck in other lands. And it was an elaborate thing how the voyage started. In ancient Jaina canonical texts, you can see how they have like mentions of how the journey started. They did some auspicious activities. They put their handprint in Rakta Chandan and put it on the ship. They raised their white flag. They watched the omens, and amidst the beating of drums and all, after securing a royal passport, they sailed. It was around the time of Kartika Purnima, usually when it happened. And so that's how the voyages started. And were these voyages smooth? Of course not. Oceanic voyages, sea voyages are always very, challenging. They have lots of risks and dangers attached to it. So these brave Sadhavas, Kalinga Sadhavas, they had always a risk of shipwreck due to adverse weather or hostile ocean creatures, topography, and all that. So one thing that helped them was their huge faith and reverence to their respective deities. So Sadhavas belong to different faiths and groups. There were Jaina Sadhavas or Buddhist or indigenous. There were different people in that, because Sadhavas didn't come from one social class. Like they could come from any, like it was not just one caste or class. Like anybody could become a sadhava who had the ways and means, the strength or the courage and the risk-taking factor. So they could be a sadhava. So they came from various faiths. So Buddhists worship Tara, the Jainas worship Ambika, then Mangala, as you all know, is from the Manga Kona. She's worshipped, so she's the savior of all the boatsmen, like that Varuna. So if you see the sculptures at Borobudur, they have shown how sailor is falling down, and that big oceanic creatures like Timingala and Makara are like dangerous creatures which could gobble up or even topple the boat. So these are all like mentions. This is how they're praying not to be gobbled up by a dangerous creature. So what did they trade? They trade in various things: diamonds, gemstones, pearls, textiles, ivory, even actual elephants. So there were a lot. These all were the riches that the Sadhavas took to all these places and brought the glories. Now, I told about all these Sadhavas, although we are talking about the Kalinga name across miles and millennia, because we had to understand because of whom all this was possible. Now we will quickly go through what are the imprints we find even now. Because of all this, how we see Kalinga's presence in all these areas. We all know about boat and lamp, our Kartika Purnima Dangavasa, and some of you might be knowing about boat and lamp festivals across Southeast Asia. So Thailand celebrates Lao Krathong, Laos celebrates Bonla Huifai, Myanmar Thandingyot, Bali Masakapun Kepasi, and Cambodia Bonam Tuk and Boneta. These are all boat and lamp festivals similar to our Dangavasa and celebrated at the same time of the year, the full moon of the lunar month of Kartika. So for that, one more thing I would like to point out here is from the entire coast of India, all of them have traded with Asia and Africa and all, like the Konkan coast, Malabar coast, Coromandel coast, now even Kalinga coast, everyone has traded. But only from the eastern part, Kalinga coast is the only coast which celebrates Dangavasa. At the same time, these other people also celebrate, Kartik, the lamp festivals. Coromandel coast, that is the Pandyan coast, didn't have anything like that. So that means, again, it's a circumstantial evidence which points towards a shared cultural, heritage or commonality between all these people. Bandha or Ikat weaves, traditional weaves, as we know in Bandha in Odisha, similarly Pochampally in Andhra. Like these all ikat weaves, if you see all across Southeast Asia, they have ikat. Like if you see these Philippine and Laos patterns, the patterns that I specifically selected, they can pass off as Odisha, handloom textile to any, person if they didn't know that it was from Philippines or Laos. Similarly, the Indonesian ikats or Cambodian, they all like the silks. They are very similar to, not same, but very similar to our ikats and weaves in India. And if you see the locations where ikat is woven, you would see mostly the earlier undivided Andhra and current Odisha. So these are the main locations of ikat, and of course Gujarat's Patun Patola. But if you see, what do you see here? Then this was the erstwhile Kalinga region. So this erstwhile Kalinga region has most of the ikat places, and it traveled because of the maritime Silk Route. Again, if you see the shared, reflections of a similar heritage, if you go to Java, Java has a lot of Shaiva temples. So let's say Bhaskareshwar in Bhubaneswar and the Chandi Prambanan in Java, they're very similar in their shape. And see this broken temple top lying here, it can pass off as any Amalaka from Odisha's, temple. Similarly, the Buddhist temple and sculptures of Java, the temple at Borobudur, are said to be very similar, the stupas very similar to our Ratnagiri, Udayagiri Buddhist heritage site stupas. Even the lions there are very similar, the Borobudur one and the Ratnagiri, Udayagiri one. So temple and sculptures in Java and Odisha, just like we saw now, there are like a lot of sites and lot of sites across all these areas, which are like have continuity in their Buddhist and Hindu shrines around the similar time period and similar style of architecture. And this is just the Kalingan ships friezes from the Borobudur temple. So now going to Cambodia. Cambodian temple sculptures, I just cherry-picked only these from the temple sculptures. These are just, adornments like the borders and trellises. So see the Odisha temple border and the Cambodia temple border, very similar. The Kirtimukha figures, very similar. Then Gajalakshmi. Gajalakshmi is an ancient Jaina, Buddhist and Hindu motif used in our Indian temples. And the similar Gajalakshmi pattern you see in Cambodia too. Then the Makara figures, Makara Pranali and all, the similar in Odisha and Cambodia. These type of sculptures also see the 9th century Odissan sculpture and the 12th century Cambodian sculpture. This is from the temple there, the Taprom temple. Another fascinating aspect is architecture of bridge. Now, if we see, a lot of ancient bridges have not survived in India. Ancient bridges, I mean, from the Hindu ruling time period, from the pre-Islamic or pre-colonial time period. We in Odisha are lucky to have Otharnala Polo still, surviving in Puri, and another couple of them even near Jajpur and all. So these are the ancient Hindu style of bridges which were built. Which were a very different type of construction than the arch and everything. You will find more details by Andrew Sterling in his book, how he has mentioned about the building and all. So if you see the Spian Praptos Bridge in Cambodia, it's the same type of architecture and around the same time period. Going to Sinhala and Kalinga, the brick stupas in Sinhala, Anuradhapura and other places, and in Kalinga, they are very similar in their make, and again they're brick stupas. Now, this, although is not tangible evidence, this is intangible, but this is extremely important. Our day-to-day life, language is very important. And when I say language, it's language of common people. Not just the classicality of the language or the classical language, as in Sanskrit for us or Latin for Christians, or, like not the language which is used in scriptures, but more I'm talking here about the colloquial language that the common people speak. So if you see Bappa as a term for father, we use in Odisha, it's a traditional way of calling our father, Bappa. Same Bappa term you can find in other parts of Southeast Asia. So mainly in Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, in some of their languages like Banjarese, Blagar, Balinese, Indonesian, Ilocano, and Malay. The same word Bappa is another, traditional form of calling. You might not find it in today's modern times that much, like how in Odisha also, Bappa only some people call, but some in newer generations that can be Papa or Dad or Daddy also. So, but we will know that Bappa is a traditional way, like that, their traditional form, one of the terms is Bappa. Same is Bo, and very similar Ibu. So Ibu, Bo. Is Bo is in Odia, Ibu is in Javanese, in traditional Javanese, that too. Odia and Polynesian languages we already saw. Kalinga is the name of Odisha. Kalinga is village. Odisha and Philippines, we already talked about that, the province and the people. Again, this one we already covered, Odia and Maori, Taupoi. Odisha, Australia also we covered. So I'm just like trying to put everything here together. Odia and Sinhalese. In Sinhalese, again, a common thing we call Luna Maricha, they will call Lunu Marish. It's a condiment accompanied, made up of salt, chilies, peppers. This is from Maldivian Dive. Dive is the language in Maldives. There is a place in one of the atolls, Adu Atoll, there is a place named Ga. See this Gan or Ga, in their language, it is written that it means village, and it comes from the Sanskrit word from village. So that might be gram, but gram, Ga, and in Odia we call Ga for village. So it must be a derivative of gram itself for sure. But the Ga similarity with our Odia way of saying Ga, I found it very significant there. So with that, I would like to wind up and say that across the miles and millennia, the presence of Kalinga name, like in various forms, and the presence of Kalinga culture or other things in various ways. So across all these miles, across so many millennia, it still survives, still sustains. And that shows the soft power of Kalinga, the soft power of these people who didn't go for conquering these lands or vanquishing these lands. They conquered it by holistic and organic ways. They went there, they stayed there, they formed colonies, they might have stayed there, people might have lived there for longer periods of time, maybe even getting married to local people, or people from there also might have come to Kalinga. You never know, it must have been a two-way interaction, because culture is never linearly, it is all, and it is never static. Cultural connections are never static. They're always moving and intermingling and learning from each other. So because of the way the Kalinga people took their things to all these places, so holistically, so organically, so systematic, slowly and steadily, everything gotten absorbed, amalgamated, and adapted by the local people also. And in turn, the Kalinga people also brought in maybe many things from those parts of the globe at that time. Right now, we cannot pinpoint exactly what everything was, but from these trace evidences, these imprints, these echoes, we can for sure say that our Kalinga people, Kalinga name has been there since a long time ago, and even now we see. So going forward, I hope that lot of interdisciplinary studies in linguistics, in genetics, in other cultural relations, in archaeology, in even weather patterns and all, oceanography and all, like lot of different disciplines of studies can be done, so that we get to know more and more about our own past, own heritage, and as a whole, the our story of Southeast Asia, the ocean people, or the people of the greater Asia and the world. So with that, I would conclude my talk. thank you everyone. Jai Jagannath. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Preeta. This was really a very enlightening presentation, precise, comprehensive, and full of inspiration. Thank you. Thank you for this excellent presentation. I hope our participants have enjoyed it equally. You kept your presentation so lucidly simple and engrossing. Thank you for that. I think we'll now have some question and answer session, and for that, kindly raise your hand so that you would be knowing who is wishing to make some comments or ask some questions.
Thank you, ma'am. I just wanted to know by what century or period the Sadavas maritime trade declined and what was the reason for that?
Okay, nothing is conclusive actually, Tarani. First of all, okay, I forgot to say something here. I would dedicate my today's talk to a dear friend who is not there with us anymore, Ashish Sarangi. He has been a great guiding force, and I feel like a lot of things that have come to me recently, somehow it's because of that divine intervention. We had been jointly working into this Kalinga's maritime heritage, into all this Southeast Asian, like we went
Nani,
jointly.
Tarini bhai know him. Tarini bhai janchandi bolche
I know
He is
Tarini,
very
I
close
know
to him.
Tarini knows. So we actually, Ashish and I were like curating and doing stuff regarding this, but which got paused. So hopefully now Soumya has joined in, and he has been helping a lot, and we want to take it forward and do it. So with that, I will like, okay, let's go to your question, Tarini. That nothing is conclusive actually. किछि कही हेबनी किंतु मु सेथरे जहा देखैथिली आपनकु ना कि हमर जो कोस्टल एरिया रे सब जे कोन से जगह रो कोस्टल एरिया देखन जोटी पोर्ट्स थाए राइट जोठी सब हार्बर्स पोर्ट्स जहा भी थाए जोठो ट्रेडिंग एक्टिविटीज हुए सेगुडा सब नेचुरल एलिमेंट्स ऊपर बहुत डिपेंड करे आमर स्पेशली आमर जो कोस्ट आज तो एते लंबा करी हबनी किंतु आहुरी बहुत सारा मैटर अछि जोटा कही ही थांता कि आमर जो लोक माने व्हाट वर द एलिमेंट्स दैट दे फेस्ड जेतेबेले से माने करूथिले नाउ बहुत ट्रिकी जगह कलिंगटा एते इजी जगह नुहे कलिंग कोस्टा आमर कलिंग कोस्टा जोठी अछि बे ऑफ बेंगल जोटा हमें जानू छे इट इज द लार्जेस्ट बे इन द वर्ल्ड इट इज प्रोन टू द मोस्ट नंबर ऑफ साइक्लोन्स आउट ऑफ 36 recorded biggest cyclones 26 has happened in Bay of Bengal. Not only that, साइक्लोन सुनामी तो हुए फनल चेक इफेक्ट जो लोकों को ऊपर बहुत माने बाजे तेणु बहुत धन हानि बहुत किछि हुए राइट तो सेमती गोटे हेले बहुत किछि जिंस नष्ट भी हो जाए ता छड़ा जो वाटर्स द थिंग्स दैट वे दे वर गोइंग टुवर्ड्स the seas and the channels near Indonesian archipelago mukhali Indonesia koni the entire archipelago there and the other related places ebero oceanic studies re kuha hue that is one of the toughest areas to for marine activities navigation correct sorry so there are papers regarding that how difficult those terrains are shoals achi reefs achi the narrow channels the current so many things so ette sara challenges sangere emane सब करूथिले first of all and जो नाही कहेंगे जो कहले जो ये हैला there must have been a multiple reason of factors गोटे हैला natural factors डिफरेंट टाइम रे साइक्लोन की सुपर साइक्लोन की ये है कि जो कोस्टल ये चेंज हो जाए जमती सी लेवल चेंज हुए कोस्ट चेंज हुए सिल्टिंग हुए रिवर माउथ रे तापरे सैंड ड्यून फॉर्मेशन हुए केतेटा आर्कियोलॉजिकल साइट शुणना पड़ला जे से गुडाक सैंड ड्यून हे कि ना सेटा से लोक माने सेठू मूव इन करि गले आउ गोटे को जगह को सो दैट दीज आर ऑल नेचुरल फैक्टर्स इवन सी वॉयजेस बेले मे बी जमती मु कहले ना रिस्क फैक्टर थाए एगुडा करे गोटे जने इंपोर्टेंट साधव अच्छी तार 10टा बोई तो गला बट it is all dependent on like how successful that voyage will be फेरिला बेलू जदि दे और गला बेलू कि फेरिला बेलू if they lost some ships then again it affects the next thing. So ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଜିନିଷ ହେଲା stability of the land. ଯଦି ଗୋଟେ land ରେ stability ଥାଏ rule ର, ଯଦି ଭଲ rule ଥାଏ, ସେ ଲୋକଙ୍କର ରିପବ୍ଲିକ ହେଇଥାଉ କି ରାଜାଙ୍କର rule ହେଇଥାଉ, ଯଦି kingdom ରେ ଯଦି ଶାନ୍ତି ଥାଏ କି prosperity ଥାଏ, trade also will be more smooth at that time. ଯେତେବେଳେ ଗୋଟେ kingdom will be more strife with internal conflicts or other things, or people are more challenged to ତାଙ୍କ ନିଜ ରୋଜି ରୋଟି ପାଇଁ ବେଶୀ ସେମାନେ ଇନଭଲ୍ଭ ହେବେ, ତାହେଲେ ଏତେ ବଡ ବଡ ଆସ୍ପର୍ଦ୍ଧା ସେମାନେ କରିପାରିବେନି। କି ଗୋଟେ ବୋଇତ ପାଇଁ ବି ଆଉ ସେ ମର୍ଚେଣ୍ଟ ଗିଲ୍ଡ ବି, ସେ ଯୋଉ ବଣିକ ସଂସ୍ଥା ବି ନଥିବ ଧରି ନିଅନ୍ତୁ, ସେତେବେଳକୁ ସେମାନେ ଆଉ ଭାବି ପାରିବେନି ଏତେ ଗୋଟେ ବଡ ଏଣ୍ଡେଭର ପାଇଁ। କାରଣ ଗୋଟେ ବୋଇତ ନବା ପାଇଁ ବି ନା ବହୁତ ଧନ ଦରକାର ହଉଥିଲା, ଲୋକ ଶକ୍ତି, ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ସ୍କିଲ ର ଲୋକ, ମାନେ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଦରକାର ହଉଥିଲା। So by the time 14, 15, 16 century ହେଲା, ଓଡିଶାରେ already ସେଇ ସମୟ ବେଳକୁ ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ଆମର ଯୋଉ ଗୋଟେ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରଙ୍ଗ ଗୋଟେ କିଙ୍ଗଡମ ଥିଲା, ଧୀରେ ଧୀରେ ସେଟା ଟିକେ ୱିକ୍ ହେଇ ଆସୁଥିଲା ଫର ଭେରିୟସ୍ ରିଜନ୍ସ। ୱିକ୍ ତ କହିହବନି, ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ହେଇ ଆସୁଥିଲା। ମାନେ କେତେଟା ଜାଗାରେ ଆଗରୁ ବଡ ଥିଲା, ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କ ଭିତରେ ମୋର ସଦ୍ଭାବନା ଥିବ ଫର ଟ୍ରେଡ, ଗୋଟେ ଅଲଗା ଅଣ୍ଡରଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଡିଂ ଥିବ, ପରେ କନ୍ଦଳ ହେଇଥାଇପାରେ। ସେମ୍ ଥିଙ୍ଗ ଫର ଯୋଉମାନେ ସାହସିକ ମାନେ ଯାଉଥିଲେ ଧରି ନିଅନ୍ତୁ ହେଲ୍ପ କରିବାକୁ। ପରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଇସଲାମିକ ରୁଲ ଆସିଗଲା କି କଲୋନିଆଲ ଟାଇମ୍ସ ହେଇଗଲା, ଲୋକ ତ ନିଜର ପେଟ ପାଟଣ ପାଇଁ ବେଶୀ ଚିନ୍ତିତ ଥିବେ ସେ ସମୟରେ। ଆଉ କିଏ ଯାଇକି ବାହାରେ ଦେଶରେ ଯାଇକି ବେପାର ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ କରିବ ସେଟା ଭାବି ପାରିବେନି। ଆଉ ବହୁତ ଆପଣ ଦେଖିବେ 11, 12, 13 ଯଦି ରେକର୍ଡସ କୁ ଦେଖିବେ, ଓସେନିକ ଯୋଉ ମେରିଟାଇମ ଆମର ସାଇକ୍ଲୋନ ଏସବୁର ରେକର୍ଡସ କୁ, ସେଇ ଜାଗା ସମୟରେ ବହୁତ ସାରା ସେଇ ସମୟ ମାନଙ୍କରେ ବହୁତ ଏମିତି ସବୁ ହେଇ ବି ଥିଲା। ତେଣୁ ମୋଷ୍ଟ ପ୍ରୋବାବଲି ପୋର୍ଟସ ଆଉ ପୋର୍ଟ ସିଟିଜ ଗୁଡାକ ଉପରେ ବି ଆଫେକ୍ଟ ହେଇଥିବ, ଆଉ ସେଟାକୁ ରିଭାଇଭ କରି ହେଇନଥିବ ମୋଷ୍ଟ ପ୍ରୋବାବଲି ବିକଜ ଅଫ ଅଦର things. So these are all just my speculations or assumptions, thinking that these were there, so this must have been there. So एमती को जगह रेकॉर्ड नहीं तरणी बाबू कि एमती समय परे पूरा डिक्लाइन ही गला। इनफैक्ट कुहा जाए इवन मोगल मानक समय रे कि इस्लामिक समय रे भी ट्रेड थिला, किंतु सेटा ओडिया साधव मानक माने ओडी देखन सेटा मु मेंशन कलिनी टॉक रे समय नथिला। कलिंग साधव मानकर सबुठ बड़ सिग्निफिकेंट कंट्रीब्यूशन हैला, सेमाने खाली निज पई करू नथिले, इट दे ब्रॉट कलेक्टिव प्रॉस्पेरिटी, दे ब्रॉट कलेक्टिव प्रॉस्पेरिटी एंड वेल्थ टू द लैंड। आमे एबे भी तपई बही रे लिखा हेची राइट कि बहुत साधव अछंती बोइते वाणिज्य करंती, तांका वाणिज्य परसादे जिणंती कुबेर को बादे। तापरे मोर लाइन गुडा पूरा मन नाही, किंतु स्फटिक मान सर्व घरे माने प्रबाल माने सब स्तंभरे प्रबाल स्फटिक माने केते रिच थिला तांकर टाउन्स गुडाक, से विषय मेंशन अछि। तांका घरर पोइली माने सर्विंग गर्ल्स माने सर्विंग पीपल माने भी सब पाट साड़ी आ ऑर्नामेंट्स पिंधुथिले। तांको स्त्री माने साधव बहु माने एते माने तांकर एते प्रॉस्पेरिटी थिला जे एते गहना रे तांको एते भारी लागुथिला जे से माने गहना पिंधिबा को जानाथले। गुरु होइला बोली अंग, अलंकार को मणे खंग। माने इतने बहुत प्रॉस्पेरिटी, से जो प्रॉस्पेरिटी दे डिडंट जस्ट ब्रिंग फॉर देम, इट वाज फॉर द एंटायर माने कलेक्टिवली पूरा लैंड प्रॉस्पर होतिला। सेही प्रॉस्पेरिटीटा हमें वांग डायुआन रो जो मु प्रथमे देखैली 14th century 15th century गोटे ट्रैवलर आसी चाइना रो, से कहूची जे दिस लैंड इज मोर प्रॉस्परस देन एनी अदर लैंड आई सॉ, दिस पीपल आर द मोस्ट ऑनेस्ट पीपल, एज ऑनेस्ट एज द बुद्धा। तेणु आम निज रेकर्ड रे आमे किछि पाउने, आमे एई जो सब अन्य माने विषय कहउचंती, दैट इज गिविंग अस एन आइडिया। सो दैट्स ऑल, आई एम डन।
We have more questions to take. आदित्य बाबू आपन देख पारथबे स्क्रीन जो हैंड रेज हेछि से अनुसार नियंत।
सर फर्स्ट हैंड रे हमें तीनटा हैंड रेज आगे नहीं जो, तापर चैट लिस्ट क्वेश्चन इज ता पर नो। फर्स्ट हमें नबा श्रीनिवास दास सर।
नमस्कार सुनील बाबू, प्रीता मैडम आ अन्य श्रोता बंधु माने। मैडम गोटे मु प्राय 93, 91, 92, 93 को बहुत समय नॉर्थ ईस्ट को ट्रैवल करथिले, तो गोटे जिनस मार्क करथिले ताकर भी गोटे बोईत बंदाण परीक्षा गोटे ଅନୁଷ୍ଠାନ ଗୋଟେ ହୁଏ, ଗୋଟେ ପର୍ବ ଗୋଟେ ପାଳନ କରନ୍ତି, ଏ ଡଙ୍ଗା ଆମର କଦଳୀ ପଟୁଆରେ କରନ୍ତି। କିନ୍ତୁ ସରପ୍ରାଇଜିଂଲି ସେଇଟା ଜଷ୍ଟ ଏକ୍ଜାକ୍ଟଲି ଆମର କାର୍ତ୍ତିକ ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣିମାର ଗୋଟେ ମାସ ପରେ। ସେଟା ମୁଁ ତାପରେ ତ ଏତେ ବେଶୀ ଖୋଜ ଖବର ରଖିନି। ତ ଆପଣଙ୍କର ଆଜି ଯୋଉ ସି ରୁଟ୍ ଟା ଦେଖେଇଲେ, ଗୋଟେ ହଉଛି ସାଉଥ କୁ ଯାଇକି ସେପଟୁ ମାଲଡିଭ୍ସ ଯାଇକି ସେପଟେ ଯିବାଟା, ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ପୁଣି म्यांमार को आसवाटा, तो ये रूटा कौन एमती भी होता पारे जे माने ब्रह्मपुत्र है कि ब्रह्मपुत्र रु पुणी से ठीक मासे परे से तू बाहर थे जे ताकू तार कमेमोरेशन रे पर्वटा पालन करा होती एटा जल्दी किसी अपन नॉलेज थाए
अगेन एटार माने टेंजेंशियल एविडेंस ही भाभी परिबा कि जोटा नॉर्थ ईस्ट आ पुराना ब्रह्मदेश जोटा एगुड़ा सब माने पोरस बॉर्डर्स ना माने बहुत माने आज का डेट रो जोटा पॉलिटिकल बाउंड्री में भाबुचे सेतुलर सेमती नथिला आई सब जगह रे इंडिजिनस हमर ओडिसा रे भी बहुत इंडिजिनस माने लोक माने रहउथिले सेमती नॉर्थ ईस्ट हो ब्रह्मदेश हो सब जगह रे इंडिजिनस लोक आ ब्रह्मदेश रो जो रिलेशन टा ओडिसा संगरे कि कलिंग संगरे दैट वाज वाया लैंड रूट and also via sea route. So ancient Burmese records रे से माने सी रूट रो माने मर्चेंट्स आछंती शिप रे बोली से मानकर ही मेंशन अछि। सिमिलरली ऊपरे लैंड रूट पटे भी लोक जाउथिले माने बाय फुट एंड नॉर्थ ईस्ट अपन जो कहउछंती निश्चय गोटे बर्मा रे थैंडिनगुत फेस्टिवल हुए that is like more related to the Buddhist heritage they say. So say Thandingut ta bhi boat or lamp festival and said a similar time re हुए not exactly same. तांकर दीटा अछि actually गोटे Thandingut आ गोटे नाटा से Thandin something बर मने पडुनी. Maybe that must be related to that because of the geographical proximity of the people to Burma, you know. And so they are all interrelated for sure. ये जो cultural continuity गोटे जिनस ना cultural continuity पूरा entire area रे अच्छी कौनसी ना कौनसी वेरे किंतु very surprisingly आमी जो कहूचे जे हाँ चोलो माने जाउथिले and all but सेमिति एतले इंडोनेशिया माने से माने जाइथिले for other reasons for sure आ परे अलगा अलगा कोस्ट रु भी विभिन्न बणिक माने जाइछंती साउथ ईस्ट एशिया को बट भावन्तु इंडियन लोक माननकु भारतीय लोक माननकु सेठी केलिंग कहउचंदी से माने तो माने तमिल रिलेटेड किछि वर्ड की माने माने आउ को कोस्ट रिलेटेड किछि वर्ड राही परथांता केलिंग कहउचंदी माने तांकर मेन लोकेशन आम संगरे सेथिबे मुछि कल्चरल कंटिन्यूटी पूरा चारियडे थिला माने कलिंगर विथ ऑल ऑफ दिस सो आपण जो एटा कहिले मु नॉर्थ ईस्ट रे जानिनी किंतु मे बी बर्मा संगरे आउ हमरी ए रिलेशन बिसरे किछोडे हेइथिबो किंतु मो पाखरे किछि नाही तार माने आई हैव नेवर कम अक्रॉस एनी records like that. Sorry.
धन्यवाद मैडम।
Sorry I couldn't help.
नहीं 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 एपर्यंत 40 वर्ष 30 वर्ष हो गलानी से प्रश्नटा अच्छी केबे गोटे समाधान हबो कि गोटे पढियो आ गुड मैडम आपण इतिहास विषय एते जो कहिले कि मात्र 3-4 वर्ष रे एतिकी चाष करिसंती माने एटा हम पय तो गोटे बड़ प्रेरणार घटना गोटे
नहीं मु सामने बेले तो पढ़ा पढ़ी करे मोरो मते पढ़िबा बहुत भल लागे आउ यू नो लाइक गोटे क्यूरियोसिटी अछि सब बेले एंड आई एठी ओडिसा बाहरे रहिला परे भारत रो अलग अलग जगह रे रहिली विभिन्न प्रकार माने मु सेतल देखली कोंकणी मानकर भी हमर महाराष्ट्र तले रहउतली बॉम्बे रे देखली केते सिमिलर वर्ड अछि सकाळ से माने भी कोंती सकाळ आमे भी कोच एमती कम माने एमती कोटे एग्जांपल दोची कोंकणी मानकर भी से कखारु फूल भजा करंती आमे भी कखारु फूल भजा करू जहां बट महाराष्ट्र रे नाही कि कर्नाटक रे कि तमिलनाडु रे नाही तो एमती जो छोट छोट कम्युनिटीज देखिली मु एठी यूएस आसला परे तार गोटे ब्रॉडर आज तो समय नहीं कि गोटे ब्रॉडर पर्सपेक्टिव देखिली एवरीवन इज एक्चुअली कनेक्टेड माने एठी मु देखुची आमे दोचे महालय समय रे जो आरंभ होचे हमर पितृपक्ष है कि आमे दीपावली रे काउरिया काठी रे आमे डाकुचे बड़ बड़िया को भाबुचे कि सेही समयटा हला पितृलोक रु आसंती ट्रैवल करंती वापस जानती एठी रहिला परे मु जानली मेक्सिको रे डे ऑफ द डेड मानंदी जो समय से भाबंती एग्जैक्टली सेही पाखा पाखी समय जेले सने भाबंती कि तांकर एंसेस्टर मानक स्पिरिट माने तांको भेटिया को आसचंती तांकोडे पूराटा फेस्टिवल सेम जिनस हालोविन समय भी से भावती अगेन सब सिमिलर टाइम रो ए सब छोट छोट जिनस देखि लागिला आमे समस्ते अराउंड द वर्ल्ड जो इंडिजिनस पीपल माने ना जो जो जगार नेटिव्स माने दे वर ऑल समहाउ कल्चरली कनेक्टेड विथ ईच अदर माने आमे जो भाभी दउचे जे के कहा को जान नथिले कि मे बी आजिका डेट रे वी आर द मोस्ट इवॉल्व्ड कि मोर एडवांस्ड मे बी दैट वाज नॉट सो सम आगुरु भी बहुत सह सह वर्ष आगुरु भी देयर वाज सम कनेक्ट between all these different type of people and see छोटो छोटो सब ट्रेस रह जाई सब so
आज्ञा थैंक यू धन्यवाद धन्यवाद
thank you
आदित्य राव नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन नियंतु
नेक्स्ट सौम्य सर
आज्ञा बट मु पूर्व आई थिंक अतुल सर केतळु किछ गोटे कहया को चाहछंती लेट हिम स्पीक बीइंग
Okay.
समवन दैट एस्टीम्ड इन हिस्ट्री अतुल सर किछ कोनचे किछ कहया को चाहछंती गोटे मेसेज भी करतले सो प्लीज या
थैंक यू मैडम रियली बहुत नो डाउट आपण करिसंती तो फार कल्चर लिंग्विस्टिक इज कंसर्न मते तो फर्स्ट टाइम सुनिया मिलला यू नो कंबल द आई मीन द क्लॉथ दे आर यूजिंग मैडम एक्चुअली मोर किछ क्वेश्चन नाही किछ कॉम्प्लीमेंट्स अछि so far as no doubt to the text which you mentioned about to reach maritime trade or the legends, you know, the folklore like Topoi, the Koibartya Purana of Odisha. No doubt they describe about the rich maritime traditions of Odisha. And so far as Tapusa and Bhalika is concerned, like Ukkala, which is identified with Ukkala. Okay. No doubt to the recent जो ये जो 10-15 वर्षर आर्कियोलॉजिकल एक्सकवेशन आउ कराई से ऑथेंटिक मटेरियल मिलगला कहीं ना रिसेंटली गोटे जगह अच्छी कायमा कायमा इन राधानगर इन जाजपुर डिस्ट्रिक्ट
right
कायमा the name itself denotes the Japanese name Kayama. Yama means highest hill, the hill of related to Buddhism actually. And no doubt, very close to the Kayama, there is a early urban center known as Radhanagar. And interestingly, from this Radhanagar, we found large number of Roman articles from this site. And like in as you mentioned, that committed Sambalaka, Sambalapur, and Ptolemy mentioned about the diamonds in Toitalia Janapad, which is identified with Titlagarh. And nowadays, if we see the Titlagarh region, Titlagarh and Garyaban and Titlagarh region, you know, it a diamond khoni discovery कराई थी, जोड़ों की Ptolemy mention करते हैं. And so far as I think जड़े के कहते हैं जो cyclone कौन पाई downfall है गला cyclone, no doubt colonial लोग असला पर हमें count करते हैं कितना cyclone है इसी, but I think so far as the earliest evidence of a cyclone is concerned, Kharavela in his inscription mention about to he rebuilt the Kalinga Nagari, which was devastated by the super cyclone. से मेंशन करछन जे केते हजार टंका देई कि ताकू रिपेयर करिसंती एंड आई थिंक इन दिस इंस्टीट्यूशन मु काई कहूची ना कलिंगटा सेति की पुराना भारत वर्ष सहित कारण द अर्लीएस्ट एविडेंस ऑफ भारत वर्ष वी फाउंड फ्रॉम खारबला इंस्टीट्यूशन आई मीन हाथीगुम्बा इंस्टीट्यूशन काइना दिस इज द अर्लीएस्ट एविडेंस ऑफ भारत वर्ष ता पूर्व भारत ना आसुनी नो डाउट भारत ना आसुची हमकु आई मीन लिटरेरी एविडेंस मिलुची जे भरत मुनि का नाम but the earliest evidence of epigraphic evidence so far as epigraphic evidence is concerned we found Kalinga with Bharata because खारबला से मेंशन करथुन जे मु भारत वर्ष को मार्च करे बाय जाउची जेतले से जिनासन को नै आछथि सेता जाउथुन जे एस्टाब्लिश कला पर जाउथुन भारत वर्ष को मार्च करिया पे आई मीन नॉर्दर्न इंडिया यू नो एंड नो डाउट मैडम आई थिंक जने के कहिथिले अफ्रीका सहित कोन अछि अफ्रीका सहित वन ऑफ द good example that is your as madam said cultural evidence that is in the Sun Temple Konark, the depiction of giraffe. We found the link of Odisha with the Africa. And very interestingly, madam, Kalinga, no doubt Kalinga I mean pre-Mauryan period. Nanda Mananga Dharikri, even medieval पर्यंत कहीं भी आम जो देखा कलिंगटा परवर्ती समय चेंज हो जाए आज यू मेंशन दैट कलिंग उत्कल ओड्र बट कलिंगटा बहुत समय पर्यंत सृष्टि होइछि इन वेरियस नेम्स Kalinga, Trikalinga, and very interestingly, and these area, I mean, we found from coastal, I mean, from Suvarnarekha to, I mean, Andhra Pradesh. Kankina, these area, Trikalinga area means, and Trikalinga also known as Kalinga, or which is, because I say, a name from which the town Telangana was derived. I mean, the Srikakulam district or Andhra Pradesh district.
Right.
So these are some important, I think, add to and no doubt from the site, very another important aspect, as you mentioned, that there are so many similarities. Like, you know, nowadays we found the Tapusa Bhalle in Radhanagar we found a steel known as Bhikkhu Tapusa Danam. So,
Right.
in 3rd century, because Tapusa Namanga. I mean, जोड़ा की literary sources थिला तो recent archaeological activity to recent research जो करा उसी तरह नुआ ना जिनिस उड़के आसु कुछ you know no doubt बड़े नुआ अध्याय जोड़ के हमो उई साइट है. Thank you madam for your good lecture.
थैंक यू आपण बहुत किछि ऐड कले ए सब जिंस एक्चुअली बहुत जिंस ऐड करी ही न थांता आज माने जत्ते ब्रीफ रखी करियो बोली करिलु माने आहुरी बहुत किछि अछि जहार आहुरी अधिक जानिबार अछि देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ मोर स्टफ एंड जेमती सर कहिले एक्चुअली जैन एंशिएंट जैन टेक्स्ट रे कलिंगर प्रेजेंस आहुरी पुराना 8th 9th सेंचुरी बिफोर कॉमन एरा माने आजिठू 2900 years ago, almost 3000 years ago. से माने कहउचंदी अवकीर्णय करकंडुंग कथा जे कि पार्श्वनाथ का समय रो आ महावीर निजे कहउचंदी जे से हेले बुल अमंग किंग्स यू नो रियल कलिंग सभ्यता हेले तो अवकीर्णय करकंडु चक्रवर्ती सम्राट थिले एंड से कलिंगर थिले से समय रे पार्श्वनाथ आस्थिले कलिंग तेनु कलिंगर प्रेजेंस माने बहुत बहुत पुराना आज आम जानूचे जे से समय जाउथिले लोक ऑलरेडी बर्मा फर्मा तामने ता पूर्व भी लोक रोहुथिले बहुत आगुरु से माने तांकर से कार्यक्रम चलैथिले और फाइनली यू नो सक्सेसफुल हेथिले बोधे से समय बेलको माने बहुत किछि अछि. बहुत धन्यवाद आपण बहुत किछि ऐड कले राधानगर
मैडम थैंक यू आ गोटे छोट जिंसा जिंसे आ पचार थिले यू नो श्रीलंका सहित you know recent survey of our team no doubt revealed you know many things from the Sri Lanka like you know madam janithibe Kakatpur ro Mangala you know so far as the Sadhavas are concerned now it is a debatable question. I mean the Sadhava who were the Sadhavas, okay, forget all these things, but you know it is said that so far as the local legends and the folklore are concerned, the one Sadhava known as Sahu, Dadhivavan Sahu, he carried out the image of original image of Mongala. But when the Mongala image are actually no doubt that the typical Kalingan style, but Kakatpur man say Mongala Mandir पाखरे जो image are देखिए, it is you know it is very unique, very similar to the iconography of Sri Lanka. जोड़ा कि मंगला मंदिर पाखरे अछि मेन पीरियड डेटिंग and as you said you know जो कोथला कोथले जे भौमकर मानक no doubt their contribution to the Kalinga and Buddhism, the explanation of Buddhism, and I think this is the only dynasty who issued a coin to the sea. This is the Samudra Karabanda. He issued a coin which is known as the Samudra Karabanda. I think tax related to ocean. Thank you, madam.
Beautiful. I'm so happy today. Things are really going so well. Whether we will take a couple of questions and then I will ask my friend Sanjay Barale to make a summary and then probably we should end today's talk because we are already, it is already 9:14 p.m. Many of people may have some other business to attend. So Aditya, please take a few more questions and then I will ask Sanjay to make a summation of today's proceedings.
Okay, sir. So the next hand raise was from Subrat Mahana, sir.
समस्त को नमस्कार मैडम बहुत सुंदर प्रेजेंटेशन कले मोस्टली अपन बुलेट पॉइंट्स सब समस्त कले दैट कि समस्त जानि परिबे संक्षिप्त रे बहुत कि जिंस मु पचरे चाहू छी जेहेतु ए जो ट्रेड करा जाउतला से समय जेहेतु ऑलमोस्ट ट्रेड टा वेल्थ रे ही ट्रेड करा जाय पड़ा ता संगे कल्चर टा पळाय दोने देश को तो से ट्रेड समय निश्चय हमर किछुडे स्ट्रांग नेवी थिबो कि जो स्ट्रांग राजा थिबे तंगु जने प्रोटेक्शन दोथिबे तो ता विषय किसी उल्लेख कोठी नाही गोटे क्रोनोलॉजी ऑफ किंगडम्स और राजा माने जो प्रोटेक्शन दुलार किसी मेंशन कोठी किसी नाही आपण बारंबार कहि आछन जे ए जो इंफॉर्मेशन आपण अन्य मानकर लेखारू कलेक्ट करछि हमर ओडिसा रे कोन जो हम लाइब्रेरी अछि कि एते किछि लेखा कोठी नाही जे क्रोनोलॉजी ऑफ राजा माने कोन करछन कोन नाही
सौम्य कहबे आपनको सौम्य रेडी
अच्छी 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 एक्चुअली मेनी लेट मिडिवल पाइक खेदा बही विषय रे हम समस्त जानिते पाइक खेदा रे देयर इज अ स्पेशल चैप्टर डेडिकेटेड टू समुद्र युद्ध आई थिंक 9 चैप्टर जदि मु मिस्टेक करूनी जो थरे भी से माने कहिसंती कि सबुठु पुराना युद्ध शैली अति पुराना युद्ध शैली जोटा हम पूर्व पुरुष माने सिद्धहस्त थिले सेटा होची से युद्ध से 9 प्रकार बोईत विषय रे सेथरे लिखा हिची इंटरेस्टिंगली इंडिया रे आज आमे कहूचे शिवाजी हेले नौबाहिनी रो जनक किंतु पाइक केदा लिखा हिची शिवाजी को जन्म रे 20 वर्ष पूर्वरु ए विषय कहया को केही नाहंती नेशनल मीडियम रे सेडा हम दुर्भाग्य ता छडा पितानी कौंडिन्य को कथा कहले कौंडिन्य सिटी जे कि युद्ध रे हरैतिले सोमा जो नागा थिले राइट पितानी नागवंश
नागवंशी सब विभिन्न ट्राइब्स ना विभिन्न जगह रे रहथिले ओडिसा इंडिया रे थिले सेठी भी थिले नागा
करेक्ट कौंडिन्य आउ या ऊपर भी नॉन ओडिया राइटिंग बहुत अच्छी कि कौंडिन्यस आर बेसिकली नॉर्थ इंडियन कौंडिन्य गोत्री बट नो इट इज नॉट बिकॉज फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लिखाई जो भी कौंडिन्य का मेंशन हेची सेठी कौंडिन्य फ्रॉम महेंद्र एंड महेंद्रगिरी आमे कालिदास का लेखारू रघुवंशम को जानू छे महेंद्रगिरी इज पार्ट ऑफ उत्कल कलिंग नाथन को महेंद्रगिरी नाथ और महोदधि नाथ बोली संबोधन करथिले रघुवंशम रे आउ ओडिसा रा जतिकी कौंडिन्य गोत्र ब्राह्मण अछंती सेमानकर वेद अलग नॉर्थ रे इट इज अथर्व वेद ओडिसा रे एटा यजुर्वेद काणुव शाखा सो दे बोथ आर एक्सट्रीमली डिफरेंट लिनिएज सेतु हमें फेयरली कहि परिबा कि देयर इज ए कंटीन्यूअस ट्रेडिशन ऑफ warfare also naval warfare जोटा कि इवन खारबुलंगर मु श्योर नु पर किसी पाइले दे देबी अतुल सर मे भी करेक्ट करि परिबे तांका सब समय रे भी किछि उडे इनडायरेक्ट कि सर्कमस्टेंशियल एविडेंस अछि नौबाहिनी विषय रे सो देयर आर राइटिंग्स
एंड मु इथरे टिके ऐड करबी पाइक खेदारा सिना से लेखा हेतिला हेटा प्रथम लेखा जेतेबेले हेतिला पाइक खेदा जस्ट लाइक अदर माने आउरी बहुत ए भलिया कार्य सब जोड़ाक ओरली माने मुहरे जाउथिला माने गुरु माने तांको से माने एमती कहि जाउथले दैट सेटा बहुत एंशिएंट पाइक खेदा
लेखार फास्ट ही लेखा अछि कि मु एटा लिखुची कारण एई से कला कौशल ला मरि बजी जाउची विधर्मी आक्रमण जवन आक्रमण हेलानी आउ केही पाइक खंडा उठौ नांदी तेणु एई कलाटा मरि जो तेणु एटा मु लिखुची या पूर्वरु सेटा तार माने स्टार्टिंग लेखा
आ एथिरे राजा फजांकर भी माने हमर देखो ओडिसा को अपन दे कलिंग को देखिबे ना कलिंग आ कोनो से भी अलगा रीजन ऑफ इंडिया बहुत डिफरेंट एक्चुअली हमें सेमती हमें गोटे कुकी कटर मेथड रे समस्त को पके कि एबेर लेंस रे भाबी दोचे सेमती नथिला कलिंग केबे भी पाइक मानको फॉर एग्जांपल देखंदु पाइक हेले सबु फैमिली रू भी लोक जाय कि पाइक हे परिबे पाइक हबाटा कि पाइक विषय शिखिबाटा माने ईच फैमिली रो लोक माने माने निजर राज्यर निजर लोकंकर सुरक्षा पई से समर कौशलटा समस्त शिखुथिले अपन फाहिन गरी का रेकॉर्ड रे अछि कि तांको संगरे ये जाउथिले बिकॉज़ सी पायरेट्स रहउथिले बोली तनो सेटा केवल राज्यांग पखरो जाउ नथिले जे मेन साधव होथिले ना से माने आज का डेट गोटे बड़ धन्य किए इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट अच्छा गोटे मेन कम सेमती साधव मान भितर एमती इंपोर्टेंट साधव थे जार कि निजर बहुत बोईत थी आउ के जन थे से मर्चेंट गिल्ड थ्रू रे जाउथिबे किंतु जो माने जाउथिले से माने हायर करूथिले लोकन को दे वर लाइक माने दे एम्प्लॉयड अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल से माने विभिन्न टाइप रो स्किल रो लोकन को हायर करथिले ता धेरे मे बी इवन हायर्ड सैनिक मान भी नौथिबे लोक मान हायर करथिबे जो माने कि वेर एडेप्टेड लाइक एबे जेमती हमें सिक्योरिटी गार्ड ने कि जाउचंती बैंक रो एटीएम रे पैसा एक करिया को राइट सेते बेले भी सेमती पीपल हु न्यू हाउ टू फाइट एंड ऑल यूज्ड टू गो अलोंग विथ दिस एंड काइंड ना सी पायरेट्स आगो काल रे भी थिले सेटा मेंशन अछि चाइनीज रिकॉर्ड मानकरे आउ आम रिकॉर्ड्स एज यू जस्ट हर्ड पाइक खेदा हला सबुठु माने आइकॉनिक लेखा की काम आम ओडिशार समर कौशल विषय रे ता छड़ा युक्ति कल्पतरु राजा भोजराज थिले गोटे पॉलीमैथ कहि पारबे तांगु से राजा हेबा छड़ा से स्कॉलर थिले मैथमेटिशियन थिले इंजीनियर थिले सब थिले लाइक ही वाज अडॉप्टिंग अ लॉट ऑफ डिफरेंट डिसिप्लिन्स आउ सी लिखिथिले युक्ति कल्पतरु जहा धीरे से इवन कलिंग शिप्स रो मेक ता विषय पूरा सब मेंशन करछंदी किंतु ए जो समर कौशल माने जो माने गार्ड्स को विषय से नाही किंतु ऑफ कोर्स फाहिन घरिकांक रेकॉर्ड्स रे अछि तेनु मे बी राजा मानकर समय रे राजा माने भी दउथिबे बट आई थिंक इट वाज मोर ऑफ अ कलेक्टिव रिस्पांसिबिलिटी जे नौथिला से ही हायर करूथिबे माने अनफॉर्चुनेटली ना हमर माने इंडिया रो कोनोसी भी आपण इंडिक नॉलेज माने इंडिक हिस्ट्री देखिबे आ सबडु दुर्भाग्य ला ओडिसा रे हमर बेसी रिटन रेकॉर्ड्स सेते बहुल भाबरे नाही जदि थिबो इधर हजि जाईची और जदि थिबो हमें ताको माने माने अच्छी बट वी हैव नॉट read properly a lot of things that were in Sanskrit and all maybe आहुरी देखियो पड़िबो then we'll know
बट कह जाए कि हमर ओडिसा रे सब बेसी मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स अछि बहुत पुराना जाकू बेस करी करी हम ओडिसा रे
पूजा होची प्राय मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट पूजा होची तो तेणु आमे रखी कि घर मानकरे ताको रिव्यूअर करी पूजा करूचे आ किछटा मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट स्मगलर मानक हाथ रे आसी कि विभिन्न कलेक्टर्स मानक पाखरे म्यूजियम रे अछि तेणु जो मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट अछि ताको आज का डेट रे पढ़ी कि माने बुझी परिवार भी क्षमताटा फॉर एग्जांपल मते यदि गोटे देबे मु कोन तार एग्जैक्ट तथ्यटा बुझी परिबे माने से जो हिसाब रे लेखा आइथिबो जहा करा आइथिबो मु गोटे मे बी गोटे फ्रैक्शन ऑफ इट बुझी परिबी तो ताको इंटरप्रेट करिवार भी जो नॉलेज ता मे बी वी आर लूजिंग इट समवेयर और वी हैव ऑलरेडी मे बी मोस्टली लॉस्ट इट समवेयर सो ताको रिवाइव करिया को पड़िबो एंड अच्छी मोस्टली आपण जहा कहिले बहुत लोक माने पाखरे थिबो निश्चय मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स बट सॉरी आई माने
just to add या पर वेणुधर पात्र सांकर गोटे लेखा अछि ऑन टाइटल्स माने सरनेम सांगिया गुडा करू से डिटरमाइन करछंती कि कोन काम करथबो सेइतरी जे मंगराज ऊपर लिखिसंती सामल ऊपर लिखिसंती सामंतराय ऊपर लिखिसंती कि मंगराज से मोस्टली लिखुतले जो माने नावल वर्कर संभाळुतले मंगराज तो
खंडायत कास्ट्रो जाउथिले सेटा मो आज ऐड करि पारलिनी वेणुधर पात्र सर इज अनदर लाइक माने तांकर इत्ते सुंदर बढ़िया बढ़िया सब रिसर्च पेपर्स अछि ना शिला त्रिपाठी और वेणुधर पात्र सरकर बहुत गुडे पेपर्स मते बहुत पर्सनली हेल्प करछि माने रिसर्च पेपर्स भीतर में कोची एबेर करंट लास्ट फ्यू इयर्स भीतर रा तेनु आपण सेगुडा को सब देखंतु बहुत आपण को अधिका और ता भीतर मिलिबो जिंस
ऑर्गेनाइज वारे ओडिसा गवर्नमेंट तरफ रु कि ओडिसा रो ऐतिह्य तरफ रु एटा किए करूची माने इजरे निक अछि
एटा मु कहि परिबिनी आमे तो निज जगह रे
स्कैटर्ड है कि गुड इंफॉर्मेशन सु अछि गुड कलेक्टिव इंफॉर्मेशन जोटा कि किछु लीड करू किछु बेनिफिट पे सेटा कि किछु करूची
सेटा मु एबे कहि परिबिनी
गोटे संस्था अछि ओडिसा इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ मैरीटाइम एंड साउथ ईस्ट एशियन स्टडीज अंडर कल्चरल डिपार्टमेंट नियर वेरी क्लोज टू ओडिसा स्टेट म्यूजियम
भॉइसटा कटी अछि कि लाउडली कहंतु
गोटे संस्था अछि अंडर कल्चरल डिपार्टमेंट ओडिसा इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ मैरीटाइम एंड साउथ ईस्ट एशियन स्टडीज
ओके
उत्कलीय नौ वाणिज्य ऊपर गोटे अछि गोटे संस्था अछि कल्चरल डिपार्टमेंट अंडर
अच्छा
सेतरे सुनील पटनायक होउछन्ती तार सेक्रेटरी सेतरे ता पूर्व देवराज प्रधान भी थिले ता पूर्व बहुत जाने को उठले सेतले से क्रिएट करथिले
अच्छा
एडा करिया भाई ए जो बाली यात्रा करा उतला से प्रोग्राम करा जाइतला सेतरे माणिकपाटना ही गला बहुत सारा पोर्ट साइट रे मध्ये सही प्रोजेक्ट रे बहुत सारा उत्खनन मध्ये करा जाइतला पालूर हे गला हमर तापर माणिकपाटना ही गला करा जाइतला किछि कि बही एबे पब्लिकेशन हो जेमदी मैडम कहले जे no doubt Odisha every village is dotted with palm leaf manuscript जो माने तालपत्र पोथी किंतु गोटे सेटबैक आसले 1999 रे जो गोटे महाबात्या आसिला सेतरे जो भागवत टुंगी गुडी जो थिला कोस्टल ओडिसा रे हमें कहि परिबा 60% सब चली गला कने गोटे मान्यता अछि तापर पड़ी गले ता नई रे भसई देबे कोन कर देबे तो हमें जति चेष्टा करथले आई थिंक 2000 व्हेन केके चक्रवर्ती वाज द डीजी ऑफ एनएमएम नेशनल manuscript मिशन हमें कलेक्ट करथलु मु मध्य संजय बाबू जानिथिनि मु निमापला कॉलेज रे आई स्टोर्ड मोर देन 4000 मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट कलेक्टेड करथिलु लोक भसई दउथिले बट जदि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ ओडिशा ए जिनिस को आहुरी आगु नब सर्वे करी ए जिनिस गुड़िक लोक भसई दौरान लोक मैंने पूजा करके पानी पकई नष्ट कर दौरान जदि आसीपार बहुत सारा जिनिस आसीपार सर
धन्यवाद 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 समस्त
आदित्य बाबू आउ रेज्ड हैंड किछ अछि
मु गोटे देखि
प्रबोध
पार
सर हैंड रेज करछन्ती प्रबोध सर अनम्यूट करे आपण क्वेश्चन पचर करन प्रबोध सर सुनि परछन्ते बाबू
अच्छा 9:26 लानी
Kalinga caste of North Andhra. Just one line on that. Actually, mo janiya hisab re Kalinga caste do samane कहउछन्ती खारवला को descendant. I mean, it's not simply possible to track from खारवला सारा. Mostly semane सूर्यवंशी गजपति मानक समय रे जो माने जाई मन से समय रे जेतु विशाल साम्राज्य थिला जो माने साउथ रे एस्टाब्लिश हेतिले ओडिसा रो जाई की they have changed actually that Sangyas titles, but those are those people basically. ସେମାନେ ସେଇଠୁ ହିଁ ମାନେ କଳିଙ୍ଗୀ ବୋଲି କୁହନ୍ତି ତେଣୁ just to answer that ଜଣେ କି ପଚାରିଥିଲେ chat ରେ
actually we have one more speaker lined up
पेडिनतलम्मांकर गोटे अछि लेजेंडरी स्टोरी अछि टेंपल सेथरे होपफुली से सेटा कुहंतु गोटे पेडिनतलम्मा बोली गोटे अछंती ठाकुराणी गोटे टेंपल अछि तार केमती कनेक्शन हमर कलिंग संगे आई होप कि से सेटा भी कवर करिवे
excellent I'll definitely ask him to touch upon that particular topic so in case it is not there in his deliberation he would include that also I'll definitely speak to him and is there anything any last minute रे जदि कि यार के प्रश्न पचारे अछि बा कमेंट दबर अछि क्विक कमेंट देले हमें आज रो एटा को कंक्लूड करिवे
सुनील बाबू can you hear me
yes
okay sorry I could able there was some little problem Preeta
but we can
madam
see you sir
बढ़िया
we can see you kindly we can see you kindly switch on your camera
मु बाहर अछि तेणु it's not
okay
yeah
okay sir
so Preeta madam बहुत बढ़िया I think she elaborated the entire story it's really amazing मु जो पचारिया चाहूतिले I think महाराणा बाबू मध्य से या टच कले जे you talk about elaborately on the trade part so it is believed that Kalinga has a very mighty naval force as well मु एथि जोगु कहूची आपण सुनि परछन तो
आज्ञा
हां
मु केवल एथि पे कहूची because there was a thought that Kalinga war was fought for securing their port and their business so that was one of the key motive why Kalinga war was fought so what is your opinion about it
I totally agree with you मु एटा आगरु भाबु नथिली माने आगरु यूजुअल हमर समस्त जहा भाबंती कलिंग युद्ध जेमति हमें पढिथिले सेमति जानिथिली बट आगो को जाई कि पढी कि जानि कि जते बेले अशोक वादन पढिली आपण माने जदि पढी नांती पढी परिबे सेटा सिंहलर माने एंशिएंट सिंहल इज बुद्धिस्ट टेक्स्ट कोटे अशोक वादन तार इंग्लिश ट्रांसलेशन अछि सेथिरे आपण अशोकंकर स्टोरी रे जानिबे कि अशोक ऑलरेडी 8 वर्ष माने जो कलिंग युद्ध समय 8 वर्ष पूर्व ऑलरेडी से बौद्ध धर्म ग्रहण कर सकथिले जणे लोक जदि 8 वर्ष पूर्व ऑलरेडी बौद्ध हे साथि से पुणी थरे कलिंग युद्धर विभीषिका देखिकी से केमु तार हृदयटा परिवर्तन हे कि से बौद्ध हे जिबे माने दीटा लाइक इट्स लाइक नॉट लाइक इधर एटा सत और एटा सत दीटा तो सत हे परिबनी सो अशोक वादनर अकाउंट हिसाब रे अशोक 8 वर्ष आगरु बौद्ध धर्म नैथिले तापरे 8 वर्ष काल तांकर बापा बिंदुसार और तांकर बापा माने चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य समय जो साम्राज्य थिला सेते बेले चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य कलिंग को अटैक केबे करि नथिले कि एनेक्स करि नथिले बिंदुसार मध्य चंद्रगुप्तंकर को आहुरी बढ़ेले किंतु कलिंग को छुइलेनी अशोक तांकर बापांकर मेन सक्सेसर नथिले अशोककर भाई तांकर अलगा सक्सेसर थिले बट अशोक कोन करथले ही डिड अ कू and he overthrew all his other brothers ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ମାରିକି ସେ ଶାସନ ମାନେ ଗାଦିକୁ ନେଲେ ରାଇଟ୍ ଆଉ ସେ ତାଙ୍କର ଯେମିତି ପର୍ସନାଲିଟି ମତେ ଫିଲ୍ ହଉଛି ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ଲେଖା ହବନି ନା ତାଙ୍କ ବିଷୟରେ ଏମିତି the way I feel about the person he must have been human psychology ଗୋଟେ ଅଛି right human nature ଅଛି ତାଙ୍କର personality ଲାଗୁଛି he must have been a person କି ମାନେ how can that person ଯେମିତି ଏଇ ରାଜ୍ୟଟା କେମିତି ମୋ ଅଣ୍ଡରରେ ନାହିଁ ଆମର ତ ସବୁ ମାନେ ଆମ ଅଣ୍ଡରରେ ସବୁ ଅଛି ଏଇ ଜାଗାଟାକୁ ବି ମତେ ଇଏ କରିବାର ଅଛି ମାନେ ଅଧିକାର କରିବାର ଅଛି ଏତେ ତାଙ୍କର ପ୍ରାଚୁର୍ଯ୍ୟ ଅଛି they are so prosper ତାଙ୍କର ଲୋକମାନେ ଏତେ ମାନେ ବ୍ରେଭ୍ ଯେ ତାଙ୍କୁ କେହି ହରେଇ ପାରୁନାହାନ୍ତି ଯୋଉଟା ମୁଁ ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ଗୋଟେ ସେଟା ସ୍ପେସିଫିକାଲି ସେଇ କୋଟଟା ଦେଖେଇଥିଲି ଡାୟୋଡୋରସ୍ ଗ୍ରୀକ୍ ହିଷ୍ଟୋରିଆନ୍ he has recorded in his text ଗ୍ରୀକ୍ ହିଷ୍ଟୋରିଆନ୍ ଟେକ୍ସଟରେ कि कलिंग गोटे जगह जोटाको केही बाहर कंट्री हैज नेवर एवर डिफीटेड बिकॉज ऑफ इट्स माइटी एलिफेंट्स एंड इट्स पीपल तो फर्स्ट सेंचुरी एडी पर्यंत ये धारणा अच्छी जे कलिंग को केही डिफीट करूना माने अशोक समय भी से थिला तो अशोक वाज लाइक केमती एडा को मु न करबी प्लस सब पोर्ट्स जोठू कलिंग रु बाहर को सब ट्रेड होथिला मेन पोर्ट्स वेयर ऑन कलिंगस कोस्टल बेल्ट तो से जो पोर्ट आजिका डेट रे देखंतु जेमती आपण जानिथिबे जे पोर्ट्स ऊपर जहार अधिकार वर्ल्ड ट्रेड ऊपर तार अधिकार चाइना रो जेमती आपण देखुथिबे राइट इट्स मेकिंग दैट pearl necklace thing around the world ports so सेई समय रे भी जदि आपनकर कलिंग पोर्ट ऊपर अधिकार अछि कलिंग गणराज्य ही थाओ कि कलिंग राजांक अंडर रे ही थाओ कि माने इलेक्टेड राजा ही थांतो कि डायनास्टिक राजा ही थांतो व्हाटएवर किंतु कलिंग रो पोर्ट्स ऊपर जदि अधिकार अछि माने कलिंग लोकंग ऊपर तार प्रॉस्पेरिटी ऊपर and all its natural resources Kalinga is always been blessed with a lot of natural resources तारे जोगु ट्रेड भी हेची और तार लोक माने both from coastal area and the hinterlands they were so industrious and enterprising ए सब को से माने बाहर को नहीं पारछंती आ एटा करबन तो आपण जो कहिले अशोकंकर मेनली एटा हेथिबो निश्चय नहले गोटे राजा ऑलरेडी बुद्धिस्ट हेचंती बौद्ध धर्म ग्रहण करिचंदी कहउचंदी परे कोन मु बौद्ध हेली कलिंग रे जो शिलालेख अछि हमर ता अशोकंकर शिलालेख ता धेरे कलिंग एडिक्ट नाही जे कि सरबगढ़ी रे अछि जोडा केबे भारत बाहरे तांगर सबुठु दूर रे कन्ना मु कलिंग रो एते विभीषिका पुरे मु दुखी हेली तमे दी एते दुखी हेथिला राजा हिसाब रे सेटा तो तमे कलिंग रो आख पाखर को शिलालेख रे लेखि पारथांते कि माने मु प्रकृति रे मर्माहत माने मोर दुखडा किनु सेठी लेखाइची एथिरु देवानंद प्रदेशी एटा कहउचंती जे आख पाखरे जो राजा माने कि लोक माने अछंती से माने जदी ठीक रे बिहेव न करिवे ताहाले तार भलो होबनी तो माने एई जो डुअल पर्सनालिटी हमें देखुचे अशोकंकर माने गोटे स्टोरी हमें पढुचे जे से ग्रेट थिले ऑफ कोर्स ग्रेट हेथिबे नले एटे सारा करि नथिबे किंतु आम पर्सपेक्टिव रो कलिंग पर्सपेक्टिव रो देखिले से गोटे अद्भुत प्रकार लोक हेथिबे निश्चय बड़ मेगालोमेनियाक हेथिबे बट इट इज जस्ट माय परसेप्शन कोठ लेखा हेछि बोली कहूनी मु जहा देखुछि माने आमे जेमति एते वर्ष परे लोकन को देखि कि जेन स्टडी करछे कि कहा विषय लेखा होछि पढुचे मे बी बिकॉज ए जो डबल कथा आसुछि ना बहुत ऑपोजिट ऑक्सीमोरन हे जाउछि पूरा सेटा तो मोर सेटा हला माने परसेप्शन जोटा आपण कहउछंती बट मे बी आई माइट बी रॉन्ग
no I think it's I think fitting well both the way I think we can discuss from a completely different perspective thank you very much
I think we can have one more session from Ms. Preeta because there's a lot many questions to be answered. So
भाई गोटे शेष प्रश्न आमे वर्तमान रो को दीटा शहर को आमे कहि परिबा जे दीटा एक्सट्रीम एंड ऑफ कलिंग
ताम्रलिप्ति
शहर रो को शहर पर्यंत
ताम्रलिप्ति रो मेंशन सब बेले रहउची ताम्रलिप्ति जोडा कि आजिका तामलुक हे जाउची ताम्रलिप्ति हैला सबुठु वेल डॉक्यूमेंटेड पोर्ट कलिंग पोर्ट हिसाब रे सब बाहर रेकॉर्ड हो आम रेकॉर्ड हो ताम्रलिप्ति विषय रेकॉर्ड रहउची आ तळे जदी जिबा ताले मोस्टली पालूर बोधवे हबो सेटा कलिंगपट्टनम तळु को आउरी हबो
आंध्र प्रदेश रो वर्तमान आंध्र प्रदेश रो अछि
आज्ञा
सही माने सही अंचल रो तो कलिंग जो माने कास्ट वाला समस्त अछंती सही अंचल रो ଶ୍ରୀକାକୁଲମ ଡିଷ୍ଟ୍ରିକ୍ଟ ରେ କଳିଙ୍ଗ
ଆଜ୍ଞା।
କାଷ୍ଟ ଗୁରା ସବୁ ଅଛନ୍ତି।
କଳିଙ୍ଗର ତ
ଆମର
ସୀମାଟା
ଆମର କାଷ୍ଟ ହଉଛି କଳିଙ୍ଗ।
ଆଚ୍ଛା
କଳିଙ୍ଗର ସୀମାଟା କୁହାଯାଉଥିଲା କି ଗଙ୍ଗାରୁ ଗୋଦାବରୀ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ।
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ଗଙ୍ଗା ଗୋଦାବରୀ ଆଜ୍ଞା ଇଭେନ
Sir,
ସୂର୍ଯ୍ୟ ଗଙ୍ଗ ମାନଙ୍କ ସମୟରେ ବି ଆମେ ଯଦି ଦେଖିବା ଇଟ ୱାଜ ମୋଷ୍ଟଲି ଦେ ୱର ଷ୍ଟ୍ରଗଲିଂ ଟୁ ଡୋମିନେଟ ଦ ଅଦର ସାଇଡ ଅଫ କୃଷ୍ଣା ଏପଟେ ପ୍ରତାପ ରୁଦ୍ରଦେବଙ୍କ ସମୟ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ କୃଷ୍ଣା ନଦୀର ଯାଏ ହିଁ ମାନେ ଥିଲା। ଅବଭିୟସଲି କପିଳେନ୍ଦ୍ର ଦେବ ରାମେଶ୍ୱରମ ଯାଏ ଜୟ କରିଥିଲେ। ଆଉ
ମୁଁ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଇଏ ସୌମ୍ୟ ପରେ ମୁଁ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଜିନିଷ ଆଡ୍ କରିବି। ଏଟା କଳିଙ୍ଗ ବିଷୟରେ ନୁହେଁ, କିନ୍ତୁ ଯଦି କିଏ ବୁଝିବାକୁ ଚାହୁଁଛନ୍ତି ନା, ମୁଁ ଏମିତି ବୁଝେ, ଲାଇକ୍ ଆଇ ଡୁ ଆପ୍ଲାଏଡ୍, ଲାଇକ୍ ବହୁତ ଜିନିଷ ଦେଖନ୍ତୁ। ଚାଣକ୍ୟ ଗୋଟେ କଥା ଲେଖିଥିଲେ ଯୋଉଟା କି ଏଇଟା ଆମେ ଆମେ ଏବେ ଭାବି ପାରିବା କେମିତି। ଚାଣକ୍ୟ କହିଥିଲେ ଯେ ଇମିଡିଏଟ ନେବର ଯିଏ ହେଇଥାଏ ସେ କେବେ ମିତ୍ର ହେଇପାରିବନି, ରାଇଟ୍? ମାନେ ଏକ୍ଜାକ୍ଟଲି କେମିତି ଲେଖା ହେଇଥିଲା ମୋର ମନେ ନାହିଁ, ବଟ୍ ଜିଷ୍ଟ ହେଲା ଯେ ଇମିଡିଏଟ ନେବର ସେଇ ରାଜ୍ୟଟା କେବେ ମିତ୍ର ରାଜ୍ୟ ହବନି। ତ ନେବର ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ସବୁବେଳେ କର୍ଡିଆଲ ରିଲେସନ, ଭଲ ରିଲେସନ ରହୁଥିଲା। ଆଉ ଯେ ନେବର ହଉଥିଲା, କାରଣ ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିକାଲି ଭାବନ୍ତୁ, କେବେ ନା ମାନେ ଏମିତି ବି ହେଇପାରେ କି କାହାର ଅଧିକା ବର୍ଡର ପାଇଁ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ କରିଦେଇପାରେ କି ମାଡ଼ି ବସିପାରେ କି। ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଓଡିଶାର ଯୋଉଟା ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି କଳିଙ୍ଗ ଯଦି ଭାବିବେ, ତାହେଲେ ଏମିତି ମାନେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ ମ୍ୟାପ୍ ଗୋଟେ 2D ହିସାବରେ ଭାବନ୍ତୁନି। ଭାବନ୍ତୁ ଓଡିଶା ଅଛି, ତାପରେ ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି ହେଲା ପାଣ୍ଡ୍ୟ ଆଉ ଚୋଳମାନଙ୍କ ଟେରିଟୋରୀ, ତ ସେମାନେ ଆମର କେବେ ମିତ୍ର ହେଇପାରିବେନି। ତାପରେ କର୍ଣ୍ଣାଟକ କି ଏସବୁ ସବୁବେଳେ ଆମର କଲଚରାଲ ରିଲେସନ୍ସ କି ମ୍ୟାରିଟାଲ ରିଲେସନ୍ସ ମୋର ରହୁଥିଲା କର୍ଣ୍ଣାଟକ ରାଜ୍ୟ ମାନଙ୍କର, ସେଇ ଯୋଉ ସବୁ ଚାଲୁକ୍ୟ ହୁଅନ୍ତୁ କି ଯେ ବି ହୁଅନ୍ତୁ, ତାଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ବେଶୀ ଥିଲା। ଏପଟେ ଦେଖିବେ ଉପରକୁ ସେମ୍ ଇଟ୍ ୱାଜ ଫର ବଙ୍ଗ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ଯେତିକି ନଥିଲା, ମାନେ ଆସାମ ଯଦି ଦେଖିବେ ଭୌମକର ମାନେ ଆସାମ ଯୋଉଟା ଆଜିକା ଡେଟ୍ର ଯୋଉଟା ଆସାମ, ତ ଆସାମ ନାଁ ନଥିଲା। ତ ଆସାମ ଯୋଉଟା ଏବେର ରିଜନ ୱିଥ ନର୍ଥ ଇଷ୍ଟ, ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ୱାଜ ମୋର ଇନ୍ ଟ୍ୟୁନ୍ ୱିଥ ଓଡିଶା। ମାନେ ତାଙ୍କର ବେଶୀ, ଆମେ ଯଦି ଆଜିକା ଆସାମିଜ କଲଚର ଦେଖିବା, ଖାନ ପାନ କଥାବାର୍ତ୍ତା ବେଶୀ ମାନେ वी आर मोर इन ट्यून विथ आसाम दैन विथ बेंगल
language also.
ଲାଙ୍ଗୁଏଜ ଯାହାବି ମାନେ ମାନେ ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ଗୋଟେ ଜଷ୍ଟ ଗୋଟେ ଅବଜରଭେସନ କି ଆମର ଯେ ଇମିଡିଏଟ ନେବର ଥାନ୍ତି ତାଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ ଆମର କଲଚରାଲ ଯୋଉ ଯାହାବି ମାନେ ରିଲେସନ ହଉ କି ଯାହା ହଉ, ହଁ ବିକଜ ଅଫ ଇମିଡିଏଟ ବର୍ଡର୍ସ ଟିକେ ସ୍ପିଲ୍ ହୁଏ କଲଚର କି ଯାହାବି, ବଟ୍ ଆମର ରିଲେସନ୍ସ ଆର୍ ଅଲୱେଜ ମଚ୍ ବେଟର ୱିଥ ଦ ନେକ୍ସଟ ନେବର ଯିଏ ବି ହେଇଥାଏ। ତେଣୁ ସେଟା ଏପଟ ସାଇଡରେ ବି ମାନେ ଏଭ୍ରି ସାଇଡ ଇଫ୍ ୟୁ ସି ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ ଦ ସେମ୍ ଷ୍ଟୋରି। ତେଣୁ ଆପଣ ମନ୍ଦିର ଷ୍ଟାଇଲ ହଉ କି ମାନେ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଜିନିଷ ମାନେ ସେ କହିଲି କି, ତେଣୁ ସିଂହଳ ଯଦି ଦେଖିବେ, ସିଂହଳର ଆମ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ କାହିଁକି ଥିଲା, କାହିଁକିନା ତାମିଲ ଯୋଉ ଏରିଆଟା ଥିଲା ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ୱାଜ ଅଲୱେଜ ଆଟ୍ ୱାର ୱିଥ ଦେମ୍। ତେଣୁ ସେମାନେ କଳିଙ୍ଗ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ, କଳିଙ୍ଗ ୱାଜ ରାଇଟ୍ ଆଫ୍ଟର ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ କଳିଙ୍ଗର ବର୍ଡର୍ସ। ତ ଏଇଗୁଡାକ ଲାଇକ୍ ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ ଲାଇକ୍ ମ୍ୟାଚ୍ ସେମିତି, ମାନେ ଆଇ ଡୋଣ୍ଟ ନୋ, ଆଇ ଟ୍ରାଇ ଟୁ ଅଣ୍ଡରଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଡ ଲାଇକ୍ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍। ମତେ ଏଇଟା ସେନ୍ସିବଲ। ଏବେ ଫର ଏକ୍ସାମ୍ପଲ ଆମର ଇମିଡିଏଟ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆର କି ଯୋଉ ଜାଗାରେ ଯାହାର ନେବର ହେଇଥାନ୍ତି ତାଙ୍କ ସାଙ୍ଗରେ କିଛି ନା କିଛି ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଇଫ ଥାଏ ଅନଗୋଇଂ, ସେମିତି ବୋଧେ ହେଇଥିବ।
Excellent, excellent. ମୁଁ ଭାବୁଛି ଆଜି ଆମେ ମାନେ we can go on, but then I think we should close today. ଆଉ ମିସ୍ ପ୍ରେତା ରିଏଲି ଥ୍ୟାଙ୍କ ୟୁ, ବହୁତ ବଢିଆ କଲେ। ସଞ୍ଜୟ,
ସୋ ବହୁତ ଭଲ ଲାଗିଲା ଚର୍ଚ୍ଚାଟା ମ୍ୟାଡାମ, ବହୁତ ଭଲ ଭାବରେ ସେ ଆନାଲାଇଜ କରୁଛନ୍ତି। ମୋର ଏଠି କିଛି ପ୍ରଶ୍ନ ନାହିଁ ମ୍ୟାଡାମକୁ, ଗୋଟେ ଖାଲି ଚିନ୍ତା ଗୋଟେ ପ୍ରକଟ କରୁଛି ମୁଁ ଆପଣ ମାନଙ୍କ ମନରେ, ଯେ ଏ ଓଡିଆ ଜାତିଙ୍କର ଏତେ ଅଧୋଗତି କେମିତି ହେଲା, ତା ଉପରେ ଗୋଟେ ଚିନ୍ତା ଆଉ ଚର୍ଚ୍ଚା ଚଲା ଆମର ପରବର୍ତ୍ତୀ କୌଣସି ଏକ ଇଏ। ଆଉ ପ୍ରୀତା ମ୍ୟାଡାମ ଯୋଉ ଇଏ କଲେ, ମାନେ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ସେ ଏତେ ମାନେ ବହୁତ ଭଲ ଭାବରେ ଷ୍ଟଡି କରିକି ଏତେ ଯୋଉ ସୁନ୍ଦର କଥା କହିଲେ, ଡେଫିନେଟଲି ଏଟା ଇଏ ହେବା କଥା। ଏବଂ ଏଠାରୁ କିଛି ଆପଣ ଯୋଉ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଇତିହାସର ଛାତ୍ର, ଇତିହାସର ଅଧ୍ୟାପକ, ଏସବୁ ବଗସ କିଛି ନାହିଁ। ଆପଣ ଇଣ୍ଟରେଷ୍ଟ ନେଇକି ଯଦି ଯୋଉଭଳି ଭାବରେ ପ୍ରୀତା ମ୍ୟାଡାମ କହିଛନ୍ତି, ଏଟା ନିଶ୍ଚିତ ଭାବରେ ସ୍ୱାଗତ ଯୋଗ୍ୟ ପଦକ୍ଷେପ। ଏବଂ ମୋର ତାଙ୍କୁ ନମସ୍କାର, ଏବଂ ତାଙ୍କୁ ଜନ୍ମ ଦେଇଥିବା ପିତା ମାତାଙ୍କୁ ମଧ୍ୟ ପ୍ରଣାମ ଯେ ଏଭଳି ଗୋଟେ ଝିଅକୁ ସେମାନେ ଜନ୍ମ ଦେଇଛନ୍ତି। ଧନ୍ୟବାଦ, ଥ୍ୟାଙ୍କ୍ସ ଅଲ୍।
ନମସ୍କାର। ଯାହା ହଉ ଆଜିର ସେସନ ମୁଁ ଯେତିକି ପର୍ସନ ଶୁଣିଛି ମତେ ବହୁତ ଭଲ ଲାଗିଛି, କାରଣ ବହୁତ ସମୟରେ ମୁଁ କଣ୍ଟାକ୍ଟ ମୋର କଟି ଯାଉଥାଏ, ବହୁତ ସମୟରେ ମିଟିଂ ରୁ ଲେଫ୍ଟ ହେଇଯାଉଥାଏ, ମୁଁ ଦେଖୁଥାଏ। ତେଣୁ ଆଜି ଅବଶ୍ୟ ପୂର୍ବରୁ କେବେ ଏମିତି ହେଇନଥିଲା, କେବେ ଏମିତି ଯୋଉ ମିଟିଂରେ ମୋର बहुत पोर्शन भी मिस करी गली तेणु से मो मन खराब तो मैडम जो टाइप रो डेस्क्राइब कले माने सत्य जेपरी अंग निभा कहानी कारण से निजे प्रत्यक्ष अनुभव आसी तेणु से गुड़ाक सब मत भल लगे बेसी ताकू ही नहीं से रिसर्च कर रेफरेंस सब खोजी कन्फर्मेशन करेंगे बोली तेणु सहीटा ही सब भल लगे आउ मैरीटाइम एक्टिविटी विषय बहुत काम एबे भी चली एठी भी आमर सिंहल सहित संपर्क थिबा नहीं गोटे अच्छी से पूरा नई मुहाण गोटे विलेज अच्छी देवी नदी मुहाड़े से गाँव ना सिंगारपुर तेणु कहती यहाँ सिंहल सहित संपर्क तेणु तार ना सिंगारपुर होती से पाखे भी गोटे अच्छी ता ना बाजपुर सेटा प्रिवियसली कह जाए सेटा वाणिज्यपुरी बोली थिला माने से गाँव सबू प्रति घर बिजनेस कम्युनिटी माने छोट छोट पिला भी से बिजनेस करती माने सबू प्रकार आइटम भी से करती माने दा कटर आरंभ कर सुना रूपा आरंभ कर सबू प्रकार बिजनेस कम्युनिटी से गाँव भर्ती तेणु मैरीटाइम एक्टिविटी बहुत थिला तापर खालकाटा पाटना जो विलेज अच्छी रामचंडी पाखे समुद्र कूल सेठी भी जियोलॉजिकल सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया गोटे खनन करते सेठी भी बहुत चाइना पात्र सब भी बाहरी थिला तेणु जहाँ मैडम एते डिटेल स्टडी करछंती विभिन्न जगह को जाइछंती तेणु बहुत तांको धन्यवाद जणेबी एते फाइंडिंग्स
धन्यवाद फ्रीज
अच्छा संजय कटि जाइए मु भावुची आम आउ डेरी करबानी माने हाँ संजय
हेरिटेज ऑफ कलिंग एक्सीडेंट टू रिसेंट टाइम्स ताको डॉक्टर सुरेश चंद्र मिश्र लिखिसंती सेटा खड़गपुर आईआईटी रो नाभाल आर्किटेक्चर प्रोफेसर से थिले तेणु से भी बहुत फोटो देइछंती सब मंदिर रे जते मंदिर गात्र जते नौकार फोटो सब देइछंती तेणु या रिसर्च जारी रहू बहुत कथा बाहर मैडम को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देवी जहाँ आज मीटिंग सक्सेसफुल होती बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग मूलर ही इंटरेस्टिंग थिला समस्ते भी लास्ट शेष पर्यंत इंटरेस्टिंगली शुणी धैर्यर सह शुणी कारण एते प्रेस्क्राइब से धन्यवाद दूची आज पार्टिसिपेंट मो जी नजर रखी 36 थिले तेणु सेटा भी आम बड़ उत्साहप्रद समस्त रोची नमस्कार सुनील
सर आप म्यूट रे अछंती
हेलो
अच्छा धन्यवाद समस्त धन्यवाद सब पार्टिसिपेंट आज स्पीकर मिस प्रीता राउत धन्यवाद ये जो आज जो मीटिंग रो रेकर्डिंग टा काली संध्या सुधा आम अपलोड करदेवा विभिन्न सोशल मीडिया रे शेष गोटे खेल अनुरोध प्रीता मैडम को जे आपन जो जो गोटे सजेस्टेड रीडिंग जहाँ जहाँ कहते गोटे लिस्ट करके काइंडली आम से ग्रुप रे पोस्ट करदेवे तो धन्यवाद समस्त को नमस्कार आज जॉइन कर समस्त पुणी थर धन्यवाद नमस्कार
नमस्कार धन्यवाद जय जगन्नाथ
जय जगन्नाथ।